Story 1. My boyfriend has disappeared every weekend for the past 3 years, and I just found out he's been lying to me about where he goes. My boyfriend, 27M, and I, 24F, have been together for 3 years. We don't live together but are close enough to spend a lot of time together. However, it is very rare for us to spend a whole day together. When we have, it's been a weekday where our schedules have just happened to line up, i.e., no work and no class. We have never spent a day on the weekend together. He works as a research assistant while getting his PhD. Every single weekend for the 3 years we've been together, he insists he is at work. I realize how stupid I've been now, but foolishly, I trusted him. I trusted that he'd work every single weekend for 3 years. That was until today. I've been studying for finals, and it's the toughest it's ever been. So I was craving some time with him, just a day where we could kick back and relax with each other. Of course, he says he can't because he's working, and I shut up about it. So today, I'm getting antsy anyway and hoping we could at least spend the evening together. I end up texting him asking when he thinks he'll be back and we can spend the night. I've done this plenty of times before, and he always responds fairly quick. This time, I'm waiting for a while. After 2 hours, I decide to text a work friend of his who's also a research assistant with him. Wouldn't you know it, it turns out they don't have work today. In fact, he informs me in that same text that they rarely ever have work on weekends. Rarely ever. So now I'm sitting here wondering, WTF is going on? I have no idea how to confront him about this. I mean, this has been going on for 3 years. If he's cheating on me, he basically has a second family at this point. But obviously, that's where my mind goes, and I have no clue what else it could possibly be. Like, is there any possible explanation for this besides cheating? How in the world do I confront him about something he's been doing for 3 years? Since he's doing whatever it is tomorrow, do I just drive over to his place in the morning and wait and then follow him? Has anyone had anything like this happen to them before? Update 1. So I logged into this account for the first time since making my original post and find that there are a lot of messages. I haven't read them all, but I will. The recent ones all ask for an update, so here it is. When I logged off, things seemed to be pretty split on what I should do. Most people just decided to call him a cheater or say that I'm the side chick. Frankly, I wasn't sure I could wait another day to confront him, so I confronted him the night of that post. No games or stalking or anything. Anyway, I had texted him telling him to come over when his work was done, and he did. I waited about 5 minutes, if that, for him to settle in before telling him that we needed to talk about something important. He immediately responded with, "Oh," which was a bit demeaning, but that sarcastic response honestly matches his personality. I tell him everything that happened. How hurt I was, how I didn't feel like I could trust him about anything considering he's been doing this for 3 years, and then asked if he had anything to say. He told me he wasn't cheating on me or anything like that. He was just embarrassed about what he had been doing. I asked him what he could possibly be so embarrassed about as to hide it and lie to me about it for 3 years. He takes like a minute to compose himself and then mutters something. He clearly feels guilty, but I obviously don't hear it, so I ask him what he said because I didn't hear. He tells me that he volunteers at a homeless shelter every weekend since coming here for his PhD. Volunteering at a homeless shelter? I swear to you, whatever emotions are coming across here were multiplied 10x in the moment. I could not comprehend what he was saying. Like, he was embarrassed for volunteering at a homeless shelter? It still doesn't make any sense, so I asked him what he meant, and he repeated that he volunteers at a homeless shelter for 6 hours on Saturday and 6 hours on Sunday every weekend. Of course, I asked him why he would be embarrassed about that, and he asks if we can talk about this more tomorrow, Sunday, and he can instead show me that he isn't lying by taking me to volunteer. I don't know what I was really thinking. I think my mind was just blank. So I agreed with a sure and asked him to leave. He apologized for the whole thing and left and then sent a text that he'd pick me up in the morning so he can prove to me that he's not lying. Of course, my mind races all night, and I tossed and turned all night, but Sunday came anyway. He wasn't lying. He takes me to a homeless shelter/soup kitchen place. I don't really know the difference. And we make food, clean, and pack daily necessities for 6 hours. It clearly isn't the place to have the conversation, so I spend most of my time doing the work and chatting with other people, and they were really nice, but of course the whole thing was still weighing on my mind the entire time. So I started asking them about my boyfriend, and they confirmed that he's been working there as long as they remember and is there every weekend. He's been there longer than most of them, it seems. Finally, our volunteering ends and we head back to his car, and I try to start the conversation, but he shuts me down and asks me to wait until we get back to his place. I say fine. Maybe I'm being a doormat here, but I was just so confused and lost, and we head to his apartment. Once there, the talking begins. He asks if I believe that he's telling the truth about working at the homeless shelter every weekend, and I say that I do since I confirmed with a lot of people while there. But I also said that I don't understand the lying, especially for as long as he did. He apologizes again and asks if I really want to know why he kept it a secret. I say, of course. He sighs and then tells me that he doesn't like people knowing that he likes helping people. Obviously, I'm going, WTF? Because this is so weird, and I ask him to explain. He tells me that when he was an undergrad student, he would always try to help his class behind the scenes by discussing problems they had or negotiating for curves or extensions on their assignments, even when he didn't personally need it. He said he enjoyed doing it and kept doing it as a master's student, but then started to do so before/after classes publicly. Apparently, most of his classmates were still happy with him, but a few basically hated him for it because he was babying them or something. So he went back to doing things behind the scenes and no longer tries to associate himself with any of the things he does to help others. Hopefully, I'm not the only one who finds this so dang weird. Like, the homeless shelter stuff and assisting your classmates aren't remotely the same. I say as such, and he tells me it does the same thing. It helps people, so he doesn't like people to know about it because then they might misinterpret his intent and think he's masquerading as a good person. Then he assures me that he's not a good person at all, but he still wants to do what he can for people, so this is what he does. WTF? So I ask if he really thinks I would get mad that he's helping homeless people in his free time. He tells me he wasn't sure at first, especially since I wanted to spend weekends together when we were first going out. Every couple does. So he just lied to hide it at first. But he knows I wouldn't do that now but kept the lie going because he thought it would be too weird to suddenly say that he's volunteering at a homeless shelter. I feel like I've come to the conclusion that he's just really, really weird. His way of thinking has always been odd, but this in particular is just so weird. Like, he seems to understand the situation and where I'm coming from but didn't think to tell me the truth on his own. We started going in circles, so I ended the conversation and had him drive me home in silence. Since then, he sent a number of texts and has tried to call me a few times. I didn't pick up on Monday or Tuesday because I felt like I needed time to think, but I finally picked up today, and we had a talk in which we both reiterated what we had said. I know a lot of people, literally all of them at this time, were telling me to break up with him, but I'm still thinking things through. I'm gonna try and get him to hang out this weekend and make my decision after that. I think some more. This whole thing has been so weird. I'm sorry that I've repeated that so much, but my brain is still rather scrambled. I don't think there will be any more updates to this because we either stay together or break up, but if there are, they won't be posted here. Edit. Reading through a lot of the comments on the previous post now to answer the most common questions. I haven't met his parents, but I have met a few of his friends. He doesn't have social media. He's met my family since I'm local, and we do spend holidays together if they aren't on weekends. Update 2. So I asked him to come over so we could talk, and he did. I then asked him some of the questions people had on here that I had written down. Volunteering for 6 hours but still not having time for me? He said he would get there a little early and leave late but would then spend the remaining hours running errands and actually working on PhD assistant stuff. I asked if he could give me details. He gave some details about academic articles that I don't remember. I asked why he couldn't spend more weekend evenings with me if this was the case. He said that he was really busy with work and that I would distract him. Ouch. Out of all the things said, I think this is the one that bothers me the most. I asked if the volunteering was court-ordered. He laughed at that and was clearly confused by the question but answered that given the special population he works with doing his PhD, he doubts he'd be able to work with them if he had a record that required so many hours. I asked if he was ever going to tell me about the volunteering. He initially says he doesn't know, then replies that he probably wouldn't have. He apologized for lying, but then said that whether he was working or volunteering doesn't make a difference to how much time he spent with me. Obviously, I pushed back on this and he got defensive, and we had an argument that basically reiterated how I felt like I couldn't trust him because he was lying about this, while he kept apologizing for the lying / making me feel that way, but that it wouldn't have changed how we spend time together. Ultimately, I asked him to explain to me again why he hid it in the first place. Like he said previously, he used to talk to professors during undergrad about extensions and questions others had behind closed doors and then make sure those things were stated to the rest of the class. He did the same thing in his master's program. This is where I got lost before. One of his professors was a hard ass, and some of his classmates were scared to talk to him about their grades. So he thought he could show them that he was willing to discuss grades, and he made a joke about his own grade in class. The professor didn't find it funny and went on a tirade about respect and showing him up, and apparently the class ended shortly thereafter because it was so tense. He said that some of the other students felt like they needed to cut ties with him to show the professor they weren't in on the joke, and that a few of them made a show of hating him from that point forward. Hearing it more in depth at least makes this make a little more sense to me. I stated again that helping homeless and helping classmates seemed like entirely different things altogether. He said that they felt like the same to him, but that I was probably right and he was wrong. I asked him why he said he's a bad person. He replied asking if he said that, and I said yes. He said that he didn't want the volunteering to make him seem like a good person because he's not. I asked what he meant, and he replied that I know him. I said, I'm not sure I do. He said that I know what he means. You don't? You do? Etc. in circles. Personally, I think he has low self-esteem, but this is a weird way to express it, and I'm not sure what else it could be. I told him I wasn't sure I wanted to continue the relationship because of the lying. He seemed hurt, but then just said okay and that it's my decision. I told him that he should at least get therapy for the classmate thing because it's clearly affected him negatively. He replied that he probably should, but he won't. After that, I gave him an ultimatum. Either spend more time with me on weekends and go to therapy, or we break up. I told him to think about it and that he has until Saturday. He said he would, and he went on his way. Update 3. This will probably be my last post here. Saturday came and he asked me to compromise. He would take a day off from volunteering if I volunteered with him the other day, and he wouldn't have to go to therapy. I said I needed to think about it. I told him later that night that I'd accept the compromise if he was willing to go to one therapy session on Sunday morning. He told me he wouldn't be willing to go to therapy and asked that we go out to dinner. We went to a local diner and basically talked about ending things. He apologized for ending things this way and said that he knew he wasn't exactly being reasonable, but he's doing what he feels like he needs to do. I basically said that that's up to him. We wished each other the best. He gave me a parting hug, and I went on my way. So yeah, 3 years of commitment for this. Kind of sucks. Have a good day. Update 4. I'm pretty intoxicated while writing this, so let me just first say sorry for my incomprehensible. Is that even a word? Anyway, I've been keeping myself busy with school and stuff, but some casual stuff every once in a while has been good stress relief. What isn't good stress relief was a text message I received today. I should have blocked him, but I didn't, so here we are. I didn't respond to him, but here's the message verbatim. Hello. Sorry for contacting you. I am sorry for how I acted after you left. I really gave a lot of things some thought. I didn't want therapy because I didn't need a professional to tell me that I'm different or weird or diagnose me with something that jeopardizes my profession. And I especially didn't want them to try and change me. I bit the bullet in January. I was diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder. You can look it up, I guess. I'm not seeing the therapist as frequently, especially after he suggested altering some of my behaviors and told me that I'm coping using my volunteering. Sorry. I'm just saying that you were right and I wasn't being fair to you. Please do not feel burdened to respond. I hope you're happy. God, he hopes I'm happy. I mean, really, after everything, he acts like some sort of victim. Just Doug. I hate it so much. Every single time I've thought of him since we broke up, I just get more angry. I guess it is nice to know that I wasn't imagining things and there is something actually wrong with him. But did he have to contact me? Gross. Anyway, I was huffing and drinking and spotted my login details still on my laptop desktop and figured an update wouldn't be too hard. I hope you guys know how to pick them better than me. Now on to the next story. Story 2. I decided to surprise my parents with a luxury resort getaway after getting my first big paycheck. but they called me a black sheep of the family, so I went with a friend instead. Last week, I called my parents and invited them to dinner at my place. I had just received my first big paycheck and wanted to celebrate this milestone by doing something special for them, a gesture to show my gratitude and love. After dinner, I planned on surprising them with tickets to a luxurious 5-star resort, a fully paid 3-day getaway where they wouldn't have to spend a single penny. I wanted the three of us to relax and enjoy ourselves. This was a token of everything I've worked toward. It was my way of saying, I've made it, and I want to share this moment with you. When my parents came over for dinner, I was excited to show them my home and share more about my work. But from the moment they stepped inside, their attitude toward me made it clear they weren't impressed. First, they looked suspiciously around the apartment and kept asking if I really lived here. Then, once I convinced them that this was really my place, my dad wandered around like a detective, opening doors, checking behind furniture, and even peeking under the sink. He repeatedly asked if I had hidden drugs somewhere, as if he couldn't believe that I was truly clean now that I was living on my own with no supervision. For context, I am the black sheep of my family. I am the child who made the grave mistake of getting involved with drugs during my high school years. This choice led to a dark and painful chapter in my life where I had to attend a treatment center to recover. I recognize now how much anguish and heartache I caused my parents during this time. They've told me on several occasions how my actions brought shame to the family's reputation back then. While hearing those words stings, I understand why they felt that way. One of the most shameful things I've done, and something I deeply regret, was stealing from my own mother just to buy more drugs. That betrayal of trust still weighs heavily on me, and if I could go back in time, I would give anything to stop myself from behaving that way. I fully accept responsibility for the choices I made and the pain I caused to my parents during those difficult years. However, I had worked very, very hard to turn my life around. Did my dad truly think so little of me that I would still use drugs, even after I had repeatedly assured him and Mom that I had left those habits behind? Even at the dinner table, when I brought up my first paycheck and told them how proud I felt about my new job, my mom undercut the moment with a cruel joke. She said, "More money means more drugs for you, doesn't it?" My dad found this hilarious and started laughing along with her. I sat there, humiliated and hurt, trying to process what more I could say to make them believe me. I asked them outright why they kept bringing up my past and why they couldn't let it go and just see me for who I am now. My dad didn't hesitate to respond and said, "People never change. No matter how shiny your job is or how much money you make, you're still an addict in my eyes." He then went on a rant about how much money he had spent on me over the years, framing me as nothing but a burden to him and how he had spent even more by sending me to that treatment center. He argued that if I was really earning as much as I claimed, then the least I could do for him was start paying all the money back. I was stunned at how cruel his words were. I argued back, reminding him that I had been very young when I made those mistakes and that I was actually grieving at the time. I told him how hard I'd worked to rebuild my life since then, and it wasn't fair for them to keep throwing my past in my face whenever they felt like it. I expected understanding, or at least a moment of reflection from them. But instead, my mom looked me dead in the eye and said with a taunting smile, "Once a black sheep, always a black sheep." Hearing that was like a punch to the gut. I had hoped this dinner would be a step toward mending our relationship, a chance for them to see the person I had become. But instead, it felt like they were determined to keep me trapped in the version of me that no longer existed. I realized then how much weight I had carried for years, trying to earn their approval, only to see that no matter what I did, in their eyes, I would always be the disappointment. I know I caused them grief during those few difficult years when I was younger, and I've taken responsibility for my actions time and time again. But constantly bringing it up, using it to humiliate me even now, felt deeply wrong. I've been trying to move on, to grow, to prove that I'm not the person I was back then. Yet they couldn't seem to let it go. It was like no matter how far I came, they were determined to keep me chained to my mistakes. After my mom's cutting remark, I couldn't muster the energy to argue anymore. I sat there quietly for the rest of dinner while my parents carried on. The focus of their conversation shifted to my sister, Serena, the golden child. They bragged about how she was excelling in life, how all her teachers adored her, and how she was always winning accolades. Hearing them praise her felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. Not because Serena was thriving, she deserved every bit of her success, but because it was so painfully clear that my parents reserved all their pride and affection only for her, while they treated me like dirt. As dinner came to an end, I realized there was no point in telling them about the gift I had planned. I had been so excited to give them something special, to show them that I could take care of them, that I wasn't the failure they always seemed to think I was. But after the way they treated me, I was pissed. I also knew they wouldn't appreciate my gift. At first, I considered canceling my reservations since I didn't give them to my parents. But now that I've thought it over, I've decided to use them for myself and invite a friend to join me. Update 1. Thank you all for your advice. Since I can't reply to everyone in the comments, I would like to give a more detailed explanation as to why I behaved the way I did and that it isn't something that I do anymore. And this is why it hurts so much that my parents just don't understand my perspective. Trust me, my behavior then had a lot to do with losing my grandparents. For the first 8 years of my life, I lived with my grandparents while my parents were off in another city, fully occupied with running their business. My grandparents were my whole world during that time. I obviously knew who my parents were, but I rarely got to see them. My dad was always busy with work and didn't have the time and the resources to visit often. Hence, I grew up with phone calls and brief check-ins rather than the actual presence of my actual parents. My grandparents, whom I lovingly called Nana and Pops, were more like my parents than my biological ones ever were during those years. They were my guides, my caretakers, and my source of love and stability. When my parents finally moved back home, they didn't come alone. They brought with them my younger sister, Serena. After my parents finally settled down here, they insisted, really, they forced me, to move in with them, and I hated it. Suddenly, I was expected to fit into this new family dynamic with 2 people I didn't know well and a sibling who had seemingly replaced me in their lives. Don't get me wrong, I understand that my parents wanted us to be a family and probably thought it was for the best for me to move in with them. But from my perspective, my life was upended in an instant, and I was the one expected to adjust while they carried on as if everything was normal. The transition was anything but easy for me. With my grandparents, life had a comforting rhythm. I had my own room, my own routines, and a sense of stability that I cherished. Moving in with my parents felt like stepping into a different world altogether. My room turned into a tiny shared space with my sister, Serena. She and I had never met before, so there was no bond between us because we had spent so many years apart. She didn't know me and I didn't know her, which resulted in us having frequent fights. Then there was my dad. He was not an easy man to live with. My grandparents had always been respectful toward each other and me, creating a peaceful and loving environment. But my dad had a temper. He would yell and scream at my mom and me for what felt like no reason at all. I was often terrified of him, and being around him made me feel on edge all the time. My mom was no better. She ignored me all day and rarely ever sat down to talk to me. As a result, I never felt comfortable around my parents and literally walked on eggshells around them. What made things worse was how my parents got upset at me if I ever complained to them about how I felt. They seemed to expect me to just blend in and forget everything about my grandparents, as if the 8 years I spent with them were irrelevant. My dad was particularly strict about this. He demanded I stop calling my grandfather Pops, insisting it was inappropriate and too childish. Instead, I was told to call him grandfather, as if using a more formal title would somehow erase the connection I had with him. Since I was so deeply attached to my grandparents, I would constantly beg them to visit me every weekend after I moved in with my parents. But my parents didn't like that. They told my grandparents to stop visiting so frequently, arguing that I needed to take some time apart from them to readjust to my real family. My mom, dad, and Serena. Naturally, I hated this. To me, it felt like my parents were actively trying to separate me from the only people who truly understood me and whom I genuinely loved. I began to resent my family more and more for keeping me away from my grandparents. Then, when I was 14 years old, the unthinkable happened. My grandparents, my Nana and Pops, passed away in a sudden car accident. A drunk driver took away the two most important people in my life. They were my whole world, and just like that, they were gone. The grief was unbearable. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask God why he would let something so cruel and senseless happen. My heart felt shattered, and I didn't know how I could possibly move forward. At a time when I needed support and understanding more than anything, my parents didn't step up to help me. Instead, they did the complete opposite. They refused to see how depressed I was. Instead, they forced me to get up and go to school every day, even though I felt like I had no energy left in me. I was consumed by grief, struggling just to make it through each day. My grades began to slip because I simply couldn't focus, and instead of helping me or offering me compassion, my parents would just yell at me on results day as though shouting at me could fix the emptiness I felt inside. I spent most of my time in bed, unable to summon the strength to do anything. My parents would yell at me for being lazy when in fact it was grief and depression. Even my teacher at school noticed my change in behavior and suggested that I see a grief counselor. But my mom dismissed that idea outright. She insisted I didn't need a mental doctor to feel okay and how therapy was just a scam. Anyways, looking back, I realized how much I needed professional help during that time. I needed someone to talk to, someone who would validate my pain and guide me through my grief. But my parents refused to acknowledge how deeply I was struggling. They left me to navigate the overwhelming sadness and loss all on my own, and that isolation only made everything worse. It's no wonder that those feelings festered and eventually contributed to the choices I made later on. As a result of everything I was going through, the grief, the loneliness, and the resentment toward my parents, I channeled all my anger into destructive choices. I started hanging out with the wrong crowd at school, and they eventually introduced me to drugs. At the time, I thought it was an escape, a way to cope with everything I was feeling. Deep down, though, I knew it was wrong. I shouldn't have gone down that path, but I desperately wished I had someone, just one person, who could sit down with me, talk to me on my level, and help me make sense of my pain. That never happened. When things spiraled further out of control, when I started drinking, doing drugs, and even stealing from my mom, my dad reached his breaking point. One day, after catching me high, he slapped me across the face and called me an embarrassment. The very next day, he sent me to a treatment center. At the time, I resented him for it, but looking back, it might have been the best thing he ever did for me. I spent a month at the center, and surprisingly, I didn't hate it. For the first time in a long while, I had a space where I could truly open up, talk about my feelings, and have people actually listen to me without judgment. The experience changed me. When I came out of the treatment center, I felt like a new person. I was able to focus better in school, and eventually I went on to study at a good college. I started building a life for myself, moving away from the person I had been during those difficult years. However, despite all my progress and the ways I turned my life around, my parents never let me forget my dumb mistakes. Not a single day passed without them reminding me of how I had embarrassed the family by using drugs and drinking alcohol. My dad especially would bring it up constantly. He told me more than once that if I hadn't been his oldest child, he would have thrown me out on the streets without hesitation. My mom wasn't much better. She would constantly threaten to cut me off permanently if I ever dared to use drugs or alcohol again. Those words hurt. Even though I worked hard to redeem myself, it felt like they saw me only as a failure, as the kid who had disappointed them. I understand their frustration and hurt, but I wish they had been able to see the person I was trying to become instead of constantly reminding me of the person I used to be. It's a pain I still carry with me as an adult. If you are wondering whether or not I ever apologized to my parents, I did. However, no matter how many times I said sorry or showed my parents that I had grown and changed over the years, their views of me never really shifted. Even when it came time for college, my dad refused to pay for my college tuition, claiming it would be a waste of money to spend it on a druggie like me. His refusal was despite the fact that he had the means to afford it. I begged him a lot, but he was unrelenting. In the end, I had no choice but to take out student loans just to fund my education. Despite all of that, I never allowed myself to hold any bitterness or blame toward my parents. Yes, they could have handled things differently, but I made my own choices. It was my decision to start using drugs, and I own that mistake. I should have found healthier ways to move on from my grandparents' death instead of using it as an excuse to act out, rebel, and embarrass my family. That was on me. Over the years, I have done my best to ask for forgiveness from my parents, hoping that they would finally move on from my past, but they never did. Also, to those who are asking why I ever wanted to gift my parents something like this in the first place when I already knew the way they behaved with me. Actually, 3 months ago, I graduated from college. This felt like a milestone, a personal victory in so many ways since I did this all on my own without my parents' help. And last month, I finally landed a position at a good firm, a job I had worked hard to secure after weeks of brutal interviews. When I received my first paycheck earlier this month, I couldn't hold back my tears. I couldn't believe that I had finally made it. After everything I'd been through, after all the setbacks and mistakes, I was finally earning my own money, and it was more than I'd ever imagined. At that moment, my thoughts turned to my grandparents. I knew in my heart that if they were alive, they would have been proud of me, showering me with the love and support they always gave so freely. Their absence left a bittersweet ache, but I reminded myself that I still had my parents. Even if our relationship wasn't perfect, I wanted to share my success with my family, to show them that I had finally made something of my life. Update 2. I've decided to go ahead and use the flight tickets and resort stay for myself, and I'll be taking a friend. I have received a lot of DMs from people asking why I continue to maintain a relationship with my mom and dad despite everything. The answer is simple. I know exactly how it feels to lose loved ones, and I have always been scared of completely cutting off my parents. When my grandparents passed away, they were my whole world, my only family. Losing them both in one night left a scar that hasn't fully healed. The pain and emptiness of that loss make me anxious and scared at the thought of losing my parents or my sister someday. Despite all the difficulties, I have always loved them as they are still my family, and the thought of being without them feels unbearable. That said, I also understand that love for family doesn't mean I have to accept being treated poorly. My parents' actions have repeatedly hurt me, and I know it's not healthy to let them continue without addressing it. So, if they continue to treat me poorly, then I will cut them off. However, for the time being, I will establish some boundaries from them. I also want to clarify something about my sister, Serena. No, I don't hate her. It's true that she is my parents' golden child, and they've always treated her much better than me. This isn't some secret. It's obvious to anyone who knows us. My parents bonded with her from the moment she was born, while I was sent to live with my grandparents ever since I was young. As a result, both of our childhoods were very different, and that ultimately shaped our relationship with our parents. But despite all of this, Serena and I have an okay relationship. She respects me as her older sister, and now that we are older, we rarely fight. In fact, she sometimes feels bad about how our parents treat me compared to her and sometimes even stands up for me. I appreciate her empathy, and I've never held her responsible for our parents' actions. It's not Serena's fault that my parents favor her or that they've treated me the way they have. Serena didn't ask to be the golden child, just like I didn't choose to be the black sheep of this family. Update 3. It's been a while since my last update. I had such a wonderful time with my friend at the resort. The experience was everything I had hoped for. Relaxing, fun, and a much-needed break from everything. Honestly, it was worth every penny I spent. Plus, my friend was incredibly kind and thoughtful. He offered to pay me back for his share of the flight and accommodation, even though he really didn't have to. It was a nice gesture that made the trip even more special. As for my parents, I haven't spoken to them since the dinner conversation, and I don't plan on reaching out anytime soon. I've decided to take things slow and go low contact with them. Over time, I've realized now that my mental health and well-being need to come first, and right now, maintaining distance from them is the healthiest choice for me. Update 4. This week, I decided to update my Facebook profile picture after a long time. I also posted a few photos from my recent stay at the luxury resort, the same one I had originally planned to give to my parents. It felt nice to share those moments, and the pictures captured how relaxed and happy I felt. Shortly after posting, my sister Serena, who is on my friends list, messaged me. She told me I looked so relaxed and beautiful in the photos and said the resort looked amazing. Her enthusiasm made me smile. She even begged me to take her along the next time I went on a vacation. However, I think Serena must have forwarded some of the photos to my parents, or at least someone did, because a few hours later my phone started buzzing nonstop. I saw that I had a missed call from my dad and several messages from my mom asking me to call them back urgently. Concerned that it might be an emergency, I returned my mom's call. To my surprise, there was no emergency. Instead, she wanted to talk about the photos from my vacation. She said she had seen all the pictures and then, without wasting a beat, demanded to know how I could afford to stay at such a luxury resort like that. There was an accusatory edge to her tone, like she couldn't believe I had earned this experience on my own. She asked if my company had somehow arranged the stay for me, implying that I couldn't possibly have paid for it myself. Caught me off guard. I couldn't believe the audacity of my mom. I scoffed and told her as plainly as I could that I was earning quite well for myself, so I had booked this stay for myself as I needed a well-deserved break. Hearing this, my mom seemed surprised and asked me casually what my salary was. Without thinking, I told her. Hearing this, she was quiet for a moment, probably stunned by the fact that I was actually doing so well. But then, instead of congratulating me or showing any kind of pride in my accomplishment, she immediately asked why I hadn't booked tickets for her, Dad, and Serena to join me too if I was really earning so well. I was taken aback by her sheer nerve. I pointed out to her how the last time we met, she had called me the black sheep of the family and dismissed my feelings. And now, just like that, she expected me to spend my hard-earned money on them to take a vacation together. Her response was that I was being selfish for not using my money on them and that I was ungrateful for enjoying a vacation all on my own when they had done so much for me over the years. She reminded me again how she and Dad had sacrificed so much and even told me that had my grandparents been alive, they would have expected me to be a better human being. Her words stung. I sighed deeply, trying to stay calm, but I had heard enough of this. I told her that yes, she was right, I had no choice but to be selfish now. I was tired of letting them treat me like trash all these years. Now I was going to be selfish by earning well and spending it on myself because I deserved to be taken care of. I no longer wanted to be dragged back into their emotional manipulation. Just to annoy her even more, I admitted then that I had originally reserved that luxury stay for her and Dad, but after the way they disrespected me during dinner, I decided to use the gift for myself instead. Mom, clearly upset, said I should have given them the reservations anyway since they were the parents and deserved to be pampered. She tried to guilt-trip me by saying that she rarely gets to enjoy anything nice for herself and that I was inconsiderate by keeping this from them. She then had the audacity to ask if I could book another stay just for her and Dad. I calmly replied, "Maybe next time show me some respect and I'll think about it." My response only made her angrier. Before she could say something more, I told her that she and Dad could keep badmouthing me if they wanted, but I was done listening to it. I had apologized over and over, and if they hadn't accepted it by now, they couldn't expect me to keep begging for their forgiveness forever. They needed to leave the past behind if they wanted a relationship with me. Otherwise, I was done. I then ended the call, blocking both her and my dad in anger so they couldn't contact me anymore. I was so done with the toxic patterns, the constant blame game, and the way they treated me. I had spent years trying to meet their expectations, trying to prove myself, and it had gotten me nowhere but hurt and resentment. I couldn't keep sacrificing my peace just to keep them in my life. If that meant cutting them out completely, then so be it. I was done being treated this way. Update 5. It's been a month since I last updated anything here. My sister was the one who sent those pictures to my parents. She apologized to me several times for it and explained that she was just proud of me and never intended to start any kind of fight. I believe her. She's assured me that she won't do anything like that again, and I trust her. Generally, my sister has always had good intentions, and she genuinely supports me. I know she would never try to hurt me on purpose, so I believe her. Even with this blow-up with our parents, Serena agrees with me that cutting them off was the right thing to do. She understands that they've been hurting me for far too long and that it's not healthy for me to keep allowing them to treat me this way. She's been very empathetic about the whole situation. Recently, my parents have been begging her to talk to me so I can unblock them on my phone. They have been insisting that they can fix things between us. Apparently, I'm now their favorite daughter, and they are constantly urging Serena to ask me to forgive them. Apparently, after my last conversation with my mom where I revealed to her my salary, my parents have gone around to relatives bragging about my paycheck and the company I work for, trying to paint themselves as proud parents. It's like all of a sudden they've realized I am their child, but only because I'm doing well now. It's frustrating because their sudden change of heart feels insincere. It's as if they only value me now because they can brag about me to others, not because they genuinely care about me or my well-being. It really makes me question if money is the only thing that matters to them. Clearly, I'm no longer the drug-addicted child they once saw me as. Now, all of a sudden, I'm someone they consider respectable. It's hurtful and eye-opening. So, no matter what, I'm not turning back. I'm not going to buy their love or respect with my money. That's not how love should work, and it's definitely not how I want to be treated. Their toxic behavior has caused me enough pain, and I finally realized that I don't need to tolerate it anymore. So, moving forward, I've made up my mind. I'm staying no contact with them. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife was having an affair with my best friend. While they planned to take his wife's company, we caught them and stopped their plan. But I think I might be falling in love with his ex-wife. I, 35M, never imagined I'd be sharing this story, but here goes. My best friend, Tom, and I grew up together in this small town where everyone knows everyone. We met in middle school when my family moved here. I was the new kid, struggling to fit in, and he was this outgoing guy who just walked up to me during lunch and shared his cookies. That's how simple friendships are when you're 12. We did everything together after that. Baseball team, video games, fishing trips with his dad since mine wasn't around much. When my parents split up during high school, his family practically adopted me. I spent more time at his house than mine, especially when mom started drinking and abused me. But that's a story for another day. His parents never complained about having an extra mouth to feed. They just set an extra plate at dinner like it was the most normal thing. I met Sarah, 34F, in college. She worked at this coffee shop near campus where Tom and I would study. Tom actually talked to her first. They'd chat whenever we came in, and I remember thinking they might end up dating. But one morning, I went for coffee alone because Tom had overslept, and Sarah and I really clicked. We talked for hours after her shift ended. When I told Tom I wanted to ask her out, he seemed totally fine with it, said he was happy for us. He was my best man when we got married 5 years ago, helped us find our first house, even spent weekends helping me fix it up. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed something wasn't right, but when you trust someone completely, you don't look for signs. 3 years ago, Tom started his construction business. His wife, Rachel, 33F, helped him get it off the ground. She's crazy smart, has an MBA, and runs all the business stuff while Tom handles the actual construction. The business took off pretty quick. They seemed perfect together, which makes what happened even worse. Sarah and I were doing good too. I work in software development, and she manages several coffee shops now. We had our routines. Sunday brunches with Tom and Rachel, game nights with friends, regular date nights. Tom and Rachel lived about 20 minutes away, but we saw them all the time. Our friend group used to joke about how we were that annoying pair of couples who did everything together. Everything changed about 8 months ago. It started with little things I probably wouldn't have noticed if they hadn't added up. Sarah got weird about her phone, always keeping it face down, taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. She changed her password too, said she had to because of work security updates or something. Then she started going on these work trips. Nothing super long, just 2 or 3 days here and there. She'd always had to travel sometimes for work, checking on the other coffee shops she managed, but it seemed like it was happening more often. I didn't think much of it at first. She'd been talking about expanding the business, so more travel made sense. The real red flag was when she bought this new perfume. Sarah's worn the same perfume since college. It's like her signature scent. But suddenly she had this new one she'd wear sometimes. Not all the time, just certain days. Again, didn't think much of it until I noticed it was always on days she said she had late meetings. I started paying more attention after that. Noticed she was dressing differently on certain days too. Nothing crazy, just a little nicer than usual. and she started going to this gym across town instead of the one near our house that she'd used for years. Said they had better classes. Tom was acting weird too. He'd always been a good friend, but suddenly he was around all the time, offering to help with house repairs, stopping by to watch games, texting Sarah about recipes because apparently he'd gotten into cooking. It should have been obvious, but I trusted them both completely. The truth came out in the stupidest way possible. I was supposed to work late one Tuesday, told Sarah I wouldn't be home until 9 o'clock or later, ended up finishing early and decided to surprise her with dinner. I noticed Tom's truck parked a block from our house when I drove up. Thought maybe he was checking on something house-related, since he'd been helping us with some renovations. I walked in quietly, planning to surprise them both if they were working on house stuff. Instead, I heard them talking in the kitchen. Sarah was saying something about being tired of sneaking around. Tom was telling her to wait, saying something about Rachel signing over more company shares soon. Said once that was done, they could figure everything out. I just stood there in the hallway like an idiot, trying to process what I was hearing. My wife and my best friend were having an affair. Not just a one-time thing, but an ongoing relationship with actual plans for the future. They were literally plotting in my kitchen while I was supposed to be at work. I had my phone in my hand and everything, but I was so shocked I didn't even think to record anything. That would have made everything so much easier. But when you're hearing your whole life fall apart, you don't exactly think straight. I didn't confront them, just quietly left and drove around for a while. Came back after Tom left and pretended everything was normal. Sarah had ordered pizza, asked about my day like she hadn't just been planning a future with my best friend in our kitchen. The next few weeks were hell. I had to act normal while gathering evidence and figuring out what to do. We still had our regular dinners with Tom and Rachel. I had to sit there watching Tom act like my friend while knowing he was sleeping with my wife. Rachel would talk about their business expanding, all excited about their future, while Tom kept giving Sarah these looks when he thought no one was watching. I started documenting everything. Saved their text messages, tracked their meetings, even installed cameras in the house. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that there was some other explanation, but the evidence kept piling up. What really got me was discovering they'd been planning this for months. They had a whole timeline worked out. Tom was trying to get Rachel to sign over more of the company before they came clean about the affair. They'd even looked at houses in another city. My wife and best friend were literally planning their new life together while pretending everything was normal with their current spouses. I decided to talk to Rachel first. Met her for coffee one morning, told Sarah I had a work meeting. Rachel didn't cry or freak out when I told her what I knew. She just got really quiet and asked how long I'd known. When I said about 3 weeks, she nodded and said she'd suspected something was off for a while. Turns out Rachel had already started preparing for the possibility of divorce. She'd noticed Tom acting strange, especially his sudden interest in the business side of things. He'd never cared about that stuff before, always happy to let Rachel handle it, but lately he'd been pushing for more control, wanting her to sign over more shares to him. Rachel had already talked to lawyers about protecting the business. She suggested we take some time to get everything in order before confronting them, said if we played it smart, we could make sure they didn't get to enjoy their betrayal. We spent the next month getting ready. I moved most of my money to a new account. Rachel gathered proof of Tom misusing company funds. Apparently, he'd been using business accounts to fund his dates with Sarah. We documented everything while pretending nothing was wrong. Rachel served Tom with divorce papers first. She'd already locked down the company assets and had proof of his financial misconduct. He tried to fight it, but her lawyers were too good. He ended up signing, walking away with way less than he planned on. I waited until Rachel's divorce was final before confronting Sarah. Just handed her the papers one evening after dinner. She started crying, not because of our marriage ending, but because she realized Tom was broke. All their plans had fallen apart. She signed without much fight, probably hoping to avoid more humiliation. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. Tom and Sarah tried to make their relationship work, but without the financial security they counted on, it fell apart pretty quick. Last I heard, they both left town. Tom's living with his brother in another state, trying to start over. Sarah moved back in with her parents. Rachel and I still see each other sometimes. Not romantically or anything. Just as friends who went through something awful together. I know this story isn't as dramatic as some others here. No big confrontations or revenge plots. Just two people who trusted the wrong people and managed to come out okay in the end. Still hurts sometimes. But I'm getting better. Edit to add some info people asked about. Yes, I got tested for STDs right away. All clear, thankfully. No, we didn't have kids. Sarah always said she wanted to wait until her career was more established. Guess that was a blessing in disguise. And for those asking about the house, I kept it in the divorce since I'd paid for most of it and had proof of Sarah's affair. Also want to clarify Rachel didn't take everything from Tom in the divorce. He still got some money from the business, just nowhere near what he would have gotten if Rachel had signed over those extra shares. And yes, I gave all the evidence to both divorce lawyers. Tom and Sarah both knew fighting would just make things worse for them. Update 1. It's been about 6 months since everything fell apart. Got a lot of messages asking for updates, so here goes. Tom's still at his brother's place in Arizona. I actually heard about this from his brother's wife who messaged me on Facebook to apologize for taking him in. Apparently, Tom told them some bullshit story about Rachel forcing him out of the business and me manipulating everyone against him. His brother believed him at first, but then his wife found my original post and showed it to him. They're still letting Tom stay because family is family, but at least they know the truth. Tom actually flipped out when he found out his parents still talked to me. Sent them this long, angry text about how they're betraying him by staying in contact with me. Said they need to pick a side. His parents shut that down fast. His dad told him if he wanted to act like a child, that was his choice, but they weren't going to pretend I wasn't family just because he messed up his life. This led to this huge argument where Tom accused them of loving me more than him. He even brought up stuff from high school. Said they always took my side whenever he and I got into trouble, which is complete BS because his parents were always fair with both of us. This turned into this whole thing where Tom started posting on Facebook about how his family abandoned him. His mom was really hurt by that. She's always been protective of him, even after all this. She tried reaching out to him a few times, but he just ignored her calls. After a while, he started telling people his parents kicked him out of the family for falling in love. Made me sick seeing him play victim like that. I feel weird about the whole situation with his parents sometimes. Told them maybe we should take a break from our Sunday dinners until things cool down with Tom. But his mom just looked at me and said, "Don't you dare let that boy take another son from me." Hard to argue with that. His dad still takes me fishing most weekends. Says it helps him deal with his disappointment in Tom. The funny thing is, Tom wasn't even this close with his parents before all this happened. He'd skip family dinners all the time, always had some excuse about being busy with work. Now suddenly he's acting like they were this tight-knit family and I'm the outsider who ruined everything. His brother called him out on this actually. Reminded him how he skipped their parents' 30th anniversary party because of some work emergency that turned out to be a golf game. Sarah is still at her parents' place. She emails about practical stuff sometimes, but my lawyer handles most of it. Her parents have been decent about everything. They apologized for her behavior and keep her from trying to contact me directly. Her dad actually helped pack up her stuff while I was at work just to avoid any drama. Found out later he made her leave behind anything I'd bought her or we bought together. That kind of surprised me. Sarah always said her parents spoiled her, but they really stepped up and did the right thing here. The surprising part is what's been happening with Rachel. After the divorces were final, we started talking more. Nothing planned or dramatic, just coffee sometimes, usually to discuss divorce paperwork or evidence we might need to keep. She's easy to talk to, and it's nice having someone who understands exactly what this feels like. Recently, she mentioned her company was having some tech issues. Their systems were a mess because Tom had hired some buddy of his to set everything up cheap. Turns out this buddy was actually someone Tom met at a bar who claimed to know about computers. The guy didn't even use passwords on their main database, just left everything open. Since I work in tech, I offered to take a look. Figured I owed her one after she helped me track Tom and Sarah's affair. Everything at her company was worse than she thought. Missing backups, no security, basically a disaster waiting to happen. What was supposed to be a quick fix turned into a bigger project. She insisted on paying me my usual consulting rate, said she didn't want any confusion about mixing personal and business stuff. Smart woman. Found out later Tom's tech guy had charged her company a fortune for this mess. And Tom had signed off on all the invoices without telling Rachel. We started spending more time together because of the work, just grabbing lunch while discussing the project, that kind of thing. Sometimes lunch would turn into dinner because we'd get caught up talking. She's different from Sarah. Direct, honest, knows what she wants. No games. No hidden agendas. If she's mad about something, she just says it. After walking on eggshells with Sarah for so long, it's refreshing. One night we were working late at her office, trying to fix this massive problem with her project tracking system. She was explaining how construction scheduling works, and I was explaining database structures. Somehow we ended up getting takeout and talking until midnight. Not about Tom or Sarah or the divorces, just normal stuff. Movies, books, funny stories from college. It was nice just being regular people for a while. I think that's when things started shifting between us. But our actual first kiss happened a week later, and it wasn't some big romantic moment. We were at her office again, arguing about the best way to organize project files. She said my system was too complicated. I said hers would be confusing for new employees. Next thing I know, we're kissing. Afterward, we both started laughing because who the hell has their first kiss during an argument about file structures? Rachel still teases me about how I tried to keep arguing my point after we pulled apart. Like my brain needed a minute to catch up with what just happened. Tom's mom noticed something was up before we did. She kept inviting us both to dinner, said there was no point cooking the same meal twice. I didn't catch on at first, but looking back, she was definitely playing matchmaker. Can't blame her. She's always been protective of both of us. His dad got in on it too. Started telling these embarrassing stories about Tom from high school like he was trying to show Rachel she traded up or something. Things with Rachel are developing slowly. We're both cautious after everything that happened. Neither of us want to rush into anything, but there's definitely something there. She makes me laugh, really laugh, for the first time in months, and she says I help her remember not all guys are like Tom. Tom found out we've been spending time together and lost it. Sent Rachel this crazy text about how she was proving his accusations right. Turns out he'd been telling people she was cold and distant in their marriage, implying she was interested in me back then. The guy who cheated is accusing us of having an affair. Rich, right? He even tried to get his brother to talk to Rachel about it. But his brother shut that down fast, told Tom he needed to grow up and deal with the consequences of his own actions. Sarah tried the same thing when she heard. Sent this email saying she always knew there was something between me and Rachel. Like that justifies what she and Tom did. I just forwarded it to my lawyer and kept ignoring her. Her parents actually reached out to apologize for that too. Said they're trying to get her into therapy, but she's resistant. Found out Tom's been telling people in Arizona that Rachel and I were having an affair behind his back. That's why she took the company from him. His brother's wife messaged me screenshots of his Facebook posts. Real victim complex stuff. Rachel's lawyers sent him a cease and desist letter about the company claims. He took down the posts but keeps telling anyone who will listen that we're the real villains in this story. The whole thing would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Tom's basically trying to rewrite history to make himself the victim. He's telling people he left because Rachel was cold and controlling, conveniently leaving out the part where he was sleeping with my wife and trying to steal the company. Some people actually believe him too, which is wild, but the people who matter know the truth. Rachel's business is doing better now that the tech issues are fixed. I still help out sometimes, but mostly because I want to spend time with her. The company stuff is just an excuse at this point. She's actually expanding to the next town over. Got this big contract that Tom had been trying to land for months. Turns out when you actually deliver what you promise instead of spending company money on your affair, business goes pretty well. Work's been interesting. My boss thinks I'm still processing everything when really I'm fixing Rachel's servers and getting creative with Zoom backgrounds. I've gotten pretty good at the whole sorry, bad connection routine when someone asks why my background looks like a construction office. Thank God for the pandemic making remote work normal. Rachel and I joke about how we would have never pulled this off in the old days of office work. Found some old photos last week while cleaning me, Tom, and Sarah in college, some camping trips, their wedding where I was best man. Put them in the attic. Maybe someday I'll be able to look at them without feeling angry. But for now I'm more interested in making new memories. Rachel found me looking at them and suggested we start our own photo collection. Nothing serious, just fun stuff. Fishing trips with his dad, Sunday dinners, that kind of thing. It's weird how Tom's parents have become even more like family through all this. His mom's birthday was last week, and Rachel and I helped his dad plan this surprise dinner for her. Tom didn't even call. Sent a text 2 days later claiming his phone was broken. His mom just smiled and said, "At least her 2 reliable kids remembered." I could tell it hurt her though. Rachel squeezed my hand under the table and later told me she's glad his parents have me around. Said it helps them cope with losing Tom. So yeah, life's weird sometimes. 6 months ago I thought everything was falling apart and now, well, I'm actually hopeful about the future. Rachel and I are taking things slow, seeing where it goes. No pressure, no big plans, just enjoying each other's company. His parents are happy for us, but trying not to make a big deal about it. His dad just says as long as we're happy and nobody's lying to anyone, he's good. Found out yesterday that Tom's been asking mutual friends about moving back to town. Says he misses his family and wants to make things right. Nobody believes him though. His brother's wife told us he's been fired from 2 jobs in Arizona already and is running out of money. Rachel's worried he might try something with the company again, but her lawyers say he can't touch anything now. I'm just hoping he stays away and lets us all move on with our lives. Edit, since people are asking. No, nothing happened between us while we were married. We both know how much cheating hurts. Things developed naturally after both divorces were final. And yes, Tom's parents know about us and they're supportive. His mom actually said she's never seen Rachel this relaxed and happy. Edit 2, for those asking about timeline. Rachel and I only started spending time together about 2 months after both divorces were final. We wanted to be sure we weren't just rebounding or trying to get back at Tom and Sarah. This isn't some revenge relationship, it just happened naturally. Edit 3. A lot of people are asking if I feel guilty about stealing my best friend's wife. First of all, you can't steal someone who chooses to leave. Second, Rachel and I didn't plan this. It developed naturally while we were both dealing with the aftermath of Tom and Sarah's affair. If anyone should feel guilty, it's them. Update 2. It's been about a year since my first post, and this will probably be my last update because honestly, life's pretty good now and there's not much drama to report anymore. Tom tried moving back to town a couple months ago. His job's attempts in Arizona failed. Shocking, I know, and I guess he thought he could somehow fix things here. His brother's wife warned us he was coming. Apparently, he'd been telling everyone he was going to sort things out with his family. His big return didn't go like he planned, though. His parents refused to let him stay with them, told him he needed to grow up and stop blaming everyone else for his choices. He ended up staying at some cheap motel, tried reaching out to old business contacts, but nobody would work with him. After a week of getting nowhere, he left again. Last I heard, he's in California now, working construction for some company. Guess he finally had to get a real job instead of living off Rachel's business. Sarah actually apologized. Not one of those fake, "I'm sorry you got hurt" apologies, but a real one. Her mom told me therapy finally got through to her. She sent me a letter, actual paper mail, not email, saying she knows she messed up and she's not trying to justify what she did anymore. Said she's moving to Seattle for a fresh start, and she hopes both Rachel and I find happiness. Not that we needed her permission, but it was nice to finally close that chapter without any drama. Rachel's company is doing great. The new software systems work better than we expected, and she's landed some major contracts. I quit my regular job 2 months ago to work for her full-time as the IT director. My old boss was surprisingly cool about it. Said he'd been wondering how long I could keep up the bad connection act during Zoom calls. The town gossip has mostly died down. Think people got bored when they realized Rachel and I weren't going to implode like Tom and Sarah did. We still get the occasional side eye from people who believe Tom's version of events, but most folks have moved on to newer drama. Tom's parents are probably happier than anyone about how things turned out. His mom basically adopted Rachel at this point. They do weekly cooking lessons together, though Rachel says it's mostly wine and gossip. His dad still takes me fishing, and we both pretend not to notice when he gets emotional talking about how proud he is of us. Yeah, that's the big news I buried in this update. Rachel and I are getting married. Nothing fancy, just immediate family and close friends. Tom's parents are walking us both down the aisle. His mom cried when we asked her, said it's the first time she's been happy about a wedding since her own. The funny thing is, neither of us wanted to get married again. We were happy just being together. But one night after dinner with his parents, we just kind of looked at each other and knew it was right. Didn't need some big moment or dramatic gesture. Just felt natural, like everything else between us. We're not rushing anything. Wedding set for next spring. Taking our time to do things right. No big promises or dramatic gestures. Just two people who figured out they're better together than apart. So yeah, that's it. No more dramatic updates needed. Sometimes life takes weird turns, but they lead you where you're supposed to be. Thanks for all the support over this past year, Reddit. You guys helped more than you know. Edit since people are asking. Yes, we're keeping both our last names. And no, we didn't invite Tom or Sarah to the wedding. Some bridges should stay burned. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My husband started believing he was on a secret TV show. He thought I was having secret phone calls about him and then threatened to choke me in front of our kids, so I got him arrested. My 30F spouse, 35M, has been experiencing behavior that has only become increasingly concerning in the past 2 months. Now, he has been talking about things that he claims are happening but he's never mentioned before. As some background info, when his behavior first started getting concerning, I managed to convince him to go to the hospital to get checked out for his mental health. He wasn't even seen by a doctor and he was told he just needs to take a certain medicine to help him sleep. The issue is, he also smokes weed, so this medicine does not mix well with that. He won't quit smoking. We also have 2 very young kids. Back to the weird recent behavior. He claims he had an old email with an inheritance that got hacked, and he needs access to it. I tried helping him get on it, but he hasn't used it in literally the 12 years we've been together. I only knew of its existence previously when I helped him switch his Facebook login, and that was an email attached. Another example is that he believes everyone is talking about him to me and everyone else. I mean, literally everyone else. He thinks there's some sort of big thing planned to hurt him or do something horrible to him soon, and that we're all on it. On a few other separate occasions, he's asked about a show that we're on and asked how much money I'm being paid to keep a secret. He also thinks I'm having secret phone calls and that I've apparently left the room to accept these calls, which then results in me coming back crying about something I've apparently discussed on the phone. Whenever I try to explain to him that none of this is happening, he fights back saying that I'm just lying to him and to tell him the truth. That I need to tell him the truth or something bad is going to happen. It's gotten so bad he ended up getting fired from his job because he was barely showing up. He kept going to the cop station to make a report instead of going to work. After he got fired, there was some sort of tense situation where they ended up calling a wellness check for him because they were afraid he was going to come back and hurt someone. The cops showed up while I was also home, and he said he wouldn't hurt someone. He only acts in defense. In recent weeks, he's gone from screaming at me, demanding answers, to just not talking to me at all. At this point, I'd rather he just not interact with me. The reason I'm writing this is because of what happened today. It was a nice day out, and I asked if he would come with me for a walk with our kids, to which he agreed. He barely spoke a word to me or the kids on this walk, and when we came across a playground, I asked if we should take the kids there for a few minutes of play. He then got upset at me for suggesting it and said, "I always control everything and I'm the queen of the decisions." I didn't even tell him we were doing that, I just asked. When I mentioned this, he just said, "Do whatever you want like always." So I figured, why not? So I played with the kids at the playground and he did his own thing. Someone left a couple of various balls there, and he was throwing them around. He then picked up the football and threw it in my direction. It flew past me a couple of feet from me. I asked why he did that, and he said, "Why are you upset? It didn't hit you." To which I responded, "Well, what if it did?" He then said, "If I wanted it to hit you in the head, I would have thrown it that way." Then he started on a rant about how he's going through the same thing with everyone lying to him, after which he sat down in the corner of the park and was doing literally nothing. I was getting upset, so I packed up the kids and started walking to leave the park. I said to him, "We're going home," and started walking away. Apparently, he tried to yell out to us but ended up taking a different way home than we did. He told me this when he met me on the street when we were almost home, saying that, "Next time I want to be an idiot and walk away. Maybe stop and listen for him calling out." I didn't hear him, but honestly, he could have easily caught up to us. I was getting more and more upset and said I wanted to go for a drive to get coffee, and he said, "Fine." I said I wanted to take the kids, and he asked why. Then I said, "Fine, you stay home with them." And he said, "No, they can go with you," and started putting them in the car. I got in the car and he got in the passenger seat, to which I asked him if he was coming with. He said, "Yes, and a drive." I told him I didn't want him coming with because he's being mean, and he said he could be a lot meaner. As I started driving away, he kept going off on the usual BS he's been talking about lately, and I told him I don't want to hear it. He started screaming at me to keep driving and shut the hell up. I stopped the car and told him to get out, and he made a motion like he was going to punch me but punched his hand in front of my face. At this point, I started crying and yelling at him to get out, and he yelled back, "No, just drive." I then said, I should just drive him to the police station for that, and he said he would choke me unconscious before we even got there. I was crying even more at this point and said, I don't want to be with him anymore, and I want him out. He said, "No." He continued to be a dick for the rest of the car ride, where I pleaded with him to not treat me this way, especially in front of our children. It's not fair to them or to me. He said to not bring them into this. I said, how couldn't I? They are literally in the car. Anyway, after I drove us home, he asked how long I've been waiting to break up with him and who I'm replacing him with. I told him I haven't been and there's no one else, which of course he doesn't believe. When he got inside, he even taunted me saying, I should take you to the cop station. In a girly voice. He's outside smoking and I'm inside with the kids writing this. Of course, I'm shook up currently, but I don't know what to do. We only have the one vehicle, which is in both our names. The place we rent is actually my mom's, so we don't have a lease, but we both have our addresses attached to this place on our licenses. He wasn't always like this. Literally only the past couple months his behavior has been this bad. I miss the person he used to be. I miss that he would spend time with me, with the kids, but he spends all his time by himself now. I don't know if he's going through some sort of manic episode or what's triggering this change in behavior, but I really don't know what to do. Is there something differently I can do to help him? Every time he talks to me about whatever situation, he doesn't accept any answer I say and also won't accept if I say nothing. Edit. I just wanted to update and let you all know we are safe. I'm sorry for not saying anything sooner. I'm a bit overwhelmed with how popular this post got and will give an actual update later. Thank you for the advice and comments as well. I will mention a couple things. We are not in the US. Where we are, marijuana is legal, so my spouse does get it from government-run dispensaries. I don't think there's a chance his stuff gets laced aside from the fact he mixes cigarettes with it. A lot of people mention meth. There is just no way. He doesn't go anywhere random. He doesn't talk to people outside of our household aside from the few times he would go to the police station. I have his location on his phone so I can see where he goes when he leaves. Update 1. Hello. First of all, thank you all for the comments, messages, etc. on my previous post. Obviously, it got a bit too much to keep up with responding, but I just want to say I really appreciate the help. To give an update, I left the house the night I made the post but went back home the following day. I wanted to be able to collect some sort of evidence I could use because my spouse has been really good at downplaying his symptoms to any authority figure. I want to mention that I had been present at most doctor and hospital visits prior, so I know what they did recommend for him. I felt at the time that they did not give him enough help for the crisis he was obviously going through. Anyway, continuing on, the couple days after the Sunday post, he did not really engage in much conversation with me or our children. Every time he entered the room, I set my phone to record. I did not get anything until Thursday when he finally started talking to me again. He was questioning who I have been talking to about him and who has been trying to sabotage his life. Obviously, I denied everything because there is no one talking to me about him aside from this Reddit post, which he didn't know about. This started to anger him, which included him yelling at me and saying if anyone is talking to me about him to bring him to the house so he can take care of them himself. I tried to not to engage anymore. This made him more upset as he was continuing to demand answers from me. He would then say, "Oh, I want to hit you," or "Don't make me slap you," when I was either not answering or just saying I didn't know what he was talking about. I got this on recording. After he ended up walking away and leaving the room, I took the kids to bed, locked us in our room and tried to sleep. The following morning, he insisted on driving me to work. I told him I wanted the car, to which he disagreed with me and said he needed it. After dropping our kids off, he started going off on me about how I am stupidly dumb, etc., for keeping his inheritance. Again, something he is clearly having delusions about. From him, I tried to disengage completely, keeping myself to the far side of the passenger seat, which caused him to grab me by the back of my neck and pull me closer to him, where he told me to listen to him. I obviously reacted to this and was super upset, telling him to please focus on driving and not touch me again. After he drove me to work, the last thing I said to him, as he was still going off on me with the car window open, was, "You desperately need help." Once I got in, I called my boss and let her know what happened. She came in, canceled her appointments for the day, and took me to the police station. We made a report. Although the sergeant we initially spoke to seemed to be against us making a report, he kept saying he will be homeless if I report him, like he's the victim in this scenario. I told him my safety and the kids' safety should be more important, and he brought in a different officer to make the statement with me. Once I completed that statement, they let me know to stay away from the house as they were going to arrest him and will call once he's out of the house. About 5 hours later, he was arrested. Apparently, he was very compliant, and with all the information I provided, they actually took him to the hospital, and he is currently on a 30-day psychiatric hold. He will be going to court at some point for uttering threats and assault, but seeing how he doesn't have a criminal record, I'm sure it will just end up being a slap on the wrist. So as of now, I am home safe with the children, and we are getting our locks changed. I will also most likely get a protection order, but in an ideal world, he gets better and that's not necessary. I guess we will see in the future. I want to again thank everyone for their comments and assistance. A lot of you made some excellent points, and although I know some of my decisions probably seem like dumb ones, I was trying to figure out the best solution logistically for us. Any other future updates will be on my profile. Update 2. It's been a while since I updated. I still get messages asking how I am and to update again. I apologize in the delay. Anyway, on to the actual update. My spouse is doing a lot better. He received the treatment he needed in the psych ward of the hospital, gets a shot every so often instead of taking pills, and only smokes cigarettes now. He's back to his normal self, engages in conversation with myself and our children like he did before this crazy happened, has a job, and honestly is being a better partner overall. Took a lot of time for me to feel like I could trust him again, but we've taken a lot of time to work on things and get back to how we should be. I know a lot of people wanted me to leave and never look back, but you have to realize how he acted in my initial post was nothing like how he is as a person. Obviously, he had some sort of weird psychosis happening, which could have been a result of a high intake of marijuana plus a couple added stressors. I don't want to go into too many details because it will give away where we are, but basically, something traumatic happened under 10 years ago that happened again a month before he started acting strange. It was one of those types of events that forces you out of your home for an undetermined amount of time. Anyway, that's all the detail I want to go into that. Obviously, he was affected by it more than I thought because when this event happened, I was the one having a difficult time and he was my rock. But after we were able to go back home and have some normalcy, that's when things started changing for him. It started with him randomly needing to gain access into an old email, to thinking he was being recorded all the time like he was on the Truman Show or something, to thinking that everyone, including me, was out to get him. This is when the threats of violence started happening. I was obviously in disbelief because in the entire time we've been together, nothing like this has ever happened. I never once felt like I was unsafe. I never felt scared until the threats continued to come and he started to escalate. After he made excellent progress in the hospital and I had many reassuring conversations with the psychiatrist, I allowed him to come home when he was discharged. It was so hard not having him around. I cried all the time. Our kids really missed their dad, and he really missed us. He needed to get help, And I'm so thankful I was able to find an effective solution. This will most likely be my last update. I don't really think I'll need to add any other details. But again, I just want to thank everyone for their messages and comments, even the ones who called me an idiot LOL. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My husband's ex and mother tried to humiliate me for years, until their almost anniversary stunt backfired and he finally cut them off for good. For reference, I, 28F, and my husband, Shaw, 28M, have been married for 2 years. Shaw and I dated for 2 years before, but we'd known each other since high school. We didn't start dating for a few years after graduation. I met him at a restaurant unexpectedly, exchanged numbers, went on a few dates, and that's how we ended ourselves here nearly 4 years later. Shaw was dating Diane, another high school girl, before I met her. She was a grade below us and had known Shaw since middle school. He and I were not really close, but we had a lot of shared acquaintances back in school, so I saw a lot of him and Diane together. After we graduated from high school, I lost touch with him because he moved to college in a distant state, and we didn't see much of one another. When we finally met at the restaurant some years later, I asked him about Diane. He told me that they had split up a year and a half ago. She was the one who dumped him because she wanted different things in life and needed a break to travel the world. But she promised to come back to him someday, which simply meant she wanted to be alone for a time, date other men without guilt, and retain Shaw as a backup plan. So, following the breakup, he remained friends with her but reduced contact. By the time we met, he'd nearly completely moved on from Diane. I had also begun to see him in a new light. He had matured much since our previous meeting in high school. Shaw and I reconnected 4 years ago and soon became friends. We still have the same laid-back relationship. He claims that is something he never had with Diane. She was continually trying to get him to chase after her because she thought it made her more beautiful. She flirted with other guys, went out with her friends without speaking to him for days, and never asked Shaw how he felt about anything. He stayed with her because he was young and stupid, and he felt obligated to make the relationship work because they had been together for so long. Another factor was that his mother, Sharon, 49F, was a major fan of Diane. Diane had met my mother-in-law numerous times while they were together. Sharon praised Diane and pretended to be someone else whenever Diane visited. According to Shaw, Diane did the same thing for Sharon, showering her with accolades and acting like a completely different person to impress her. They would chat about other people, particularly Shaw's female acquaintances, whom he despised, and sometimes even about him, Shaw's aunts and cousins. Diane is also conventionally attractive, which makes Sharon appreciate her even more. I'm not sure why that exists, but it does. Shaw told me that Sharon continued to invite Diane to family occasions and holiday dinners after their breakup. He tried talking to his mother about it, urging her not to invite Diane, but Sharon refused. She stated that she really liked her, and that even though they had split up, she and Diane remained friends, so she saw nothing wrong with inviting her around. They spoke almost every other week and were really good friends. So this persisted even after I began dating Shaw and he introduced me to his family. I felt strange about it at first and still do, but there was a reason I had tolerated it for so long. Shaw initially brought me home to meet his family for Christmas 4 years ago. We had been dating for about 8 months. Diane was also present, and she treated me horribly the entire time. She critiqued my appearance, height, clothes, makeup, you name it. She was skilled enough to make everything sound funny, as if she was joking, but Shaw knew exactly what she was doing and stood up for me. Sharon, on the other hand, quickly shut it down and asked me if I had a problem with Diane's jokes, putting me in the position. I knew that if I indicated I wasn't good with it, they'd make it appear as if I was insecure or jealous, putting me down even further. So I resolved to present a strong front and say, I don't care. It was petty of me, but the moment I said it, I saw their expressions. They seemed surprised and annoyed. That's when I realized I'd done the correct thing. When Shaw and I came home, he apologized to me for Sharon and Diane's behavior. He promised me he'd make sure his mother stopped inviting Diane to family functions, but I was the one who warned him not to do that. I knew the type of women they were, and I didn't want to lose to them, if you get my drift. I didn't want them to believe they were intimidating me or making me feel insecure, because they had not, and I felt compelled to prove it. I explained this to Shaw, and although he was astonished by my approach, he stopped interfering. After that day, since then, Diane has attended every single family function Sharon has thrown. Every time, they act the same way with me. Snide remarks, backhanded compliments, constant attempts to bring up Diane's past with Shaw, even when it is entirely unrelated, in order to make things difficult for me. I've confronted everything with a brave face, and I try to remain as unmoved as possible. Sharon has even stated multiple times that Diane was her ideal daughter-in-law and would have made a better bride for Shaw, indirectly, of course. It was bothersome, but I tried to seem unconcerned because as long as Shaw was by my side, I didn't mind what others said. Sharon and Diane could talk for hours on end, and it wouldn't matter to me. That's how I've handled things for the past 4 years, and I intended to maintain the same mindset for the next 4. I was not going to be the first one to snap, that was for sure. Now, let's get into what actually happened, the incident that brought me here. Sharon became 49 years old 3 days ago. Every year, she throws a big celebration for her family and friends. This year, Shaw did not want to attend. Instead, he wanted to attend his coworker's engagement celebration, which happened to fall on the same day, and he had good reasons. His coworker was only getting engaged once, and they were really close. However, Sharon refused to accept it. She made him pledge to attend her birthday party instead, and after days of pressure, she wore him out. So we decided to go. Diane was invited to the function, just like any other, and she dressed to the nines. For some reason, Sharon was also overdressed, but it was her birthday, so I let that one go. Shaw and I had agreed to leave after Sharon cut the cake and attend the engagement celebration at around 5:30 p.m. My father-in-law brought out the cakes, and to our astonishment, there were 2. One of them stated, "Happy almost anniversary." Shaw and I were puzzled. We had no idea what the other cake meant, and neither did anyone else. We waited for the birthday girl to explain. Instead, Diane took over. To our surprise, she took Shaw's arm and dragged him to stand close to her. We were too surprised to respond because he had suddenly been forced into the spotlight, and everyone was staring at him. Then Diane began chatting. She began by telling that almost 10 years ago, on Sharon's birthday, Shaw had gotten down on one knee and handed her a promise ring. They were both 18 years old at the time, set to go to various colleges. 10 years later, she still wore the same ring to prove that. She proudly raised her hand in front of everyone. Then she wrapped Shaw in an awkward hug, which he did not respond to. Sharon encouraged them, smiling as she explained that she was ready to let them steal her thunder this time, so they could enjoy what may have been. The whole situation was so absurd that Shaw and I stood there with our mouths agape, just like the rest of the guests. For several minutes, no one spoke, because what could you possibly say in response to something this insane? But Diane kept going. She joked about Shaw being her almost husband and Sharon being her almost mother-in-law. Thus today was their almost anniversary, as if we didn't get the joke. Then Sharon sliced the so-called anniversary cake. She started by feeding Diane a slice, then she tried feeding it to Shaw. That's when Shaw appeared to snap back to reality. He backed away from his mother when she brought the cake close to his mouth. Sharon was astonished and questioned him, "What's wrong?" That's when all hell broke loose. Shaw exploded. He began shouting at Sharon and Diane, calling them out for what they had just done. Years of pent-up rage eventually spilled out right there in the thick of the celebration. He ripped into them, calling them shallow, ignorant, and so self-centered that they had become entirely insane. He admitted that he felt humiliated to have ever been engaged with Diane. He was even more mortified that he was biologically connected to Sharon because they were the trashiest women he'd ever met. I have to admit that his reaction surprised me. Shaw is normally a pretty calm guy. He rarely yells or gets furious with others. It takes a lot to drive him to the brink. But Sharon and Diane had finally finished it with each other's assistance, of course. After shouting at them, Shaw stormed out of the party, followed by me. Instead, we took a taxi directly to his coworker's place. I tried to talk to him in the cab, but he was clearly agitated. He said he didn't want to talk about his mother or his ex at that time, so I dropped it. When we arrived at the engagement party, His attitude gradually improved as he greeted his friends and coworkers. I was happy to see he was doing well. When we returned home, Shaw was in a much better mood, so I decided to bring up what happened at Sharon's party again, hoping that he would want to talk about it now. But he didn't. Instead, I received an earful about how some of this was also my fault. When I recalled the event, he admitted that Sharon and Diane had attempted to embarrass me with that ludicrous cake. But I wasn't completely innocent. He reminded me that for years, I had forced him to remain silent and let Sharon and Diane do whatever they wanted, because I felt I needed to demonstrate that I didn't care. I had made it all about myself, my urge to show others how unconcerned I was. But in doing so, I entirely forgot that Shaw was equally implicated in this mess as I was, and it was getting on his nerves. While Sharon, Diane, and I were competing in mind games, Shaw was hurting. Nobody bothered to check on him or ask how he felt about anything. He did not anticipate his mother or ex to show him any consideration, but he expected it of me. And in that moment, he told me something that struck me hard. I'd let him down by prioritizing my own feelings over his in the scenario that night. I protested with him, telling him that he was being far too harsh and cruel to me, but now that I've had time to think about it, I believe he was correct. I had pushed my husband to remain silent for years while his mother welcomed his ex to family gatherings only to bring me down. Okay, I apologized to Shaw this evening. I read the comments, did some reflection, and even discussed it with a few of my friends. I concluded that I was in the wrong here and that what he said that day was accurate. I had been putting my feelings before his, and I was so busy behaving as if Diane and Sharon's behavior didn't disturb me that I didn't even consider the possibility that it did bother Shaw. For his sake, I should have allowed him to terminate this if he wanted to. I forced him to ignore his own feelings for years so that I could win a sick mind game with individuals I didn't even like, and in doing so, I risked the one connection that was most important to me. I had made a serious mistake and realized I needed to make amends. Shaw had been giving me the cold shoulder since the party, and I had tried to pretend it didn't bother me. It's something I've always done, and it's been a problem for a long time. My natural reaction is to pretend that things don't upset me, even when they do. I want to be viewed as unconcerned and unaffected by anything, so I act like it and suppress my emotions. I now recognize that this is a really harmful coping method. I absolutely need to work on this if I want my marriage to work. I skipped work today and decided to get him dinner at his favorite restaurant, as well as a chocolate cake with the words, "I'm sorry," written on it. I returned home, set everything up, and tried to make it as romantic as possible because I know he likes sappy rom-com style apologies. Also, I was really sorry for what I had put him through, even if it was inadvertent. He arrived home from work in the evening and was surprised to see what I had planned for him. He forgave me within 15 minutes of his arrival. We had a tearful reconciliation, and I ended up crying because I was afraid I'd lose him over it. When he wasn't speaking to me, I felt completely adrift. We spoke it out, and everything is well between us now. Since I admitted my mistake, I revealed to him my constant desire to be viewed as calm and laid back, someone nonchalant for no other reason than it seems cool, and because I don't want to be vulnerable in front of others. That is the underlying explanation for this entire catastrophe. He recognized and respected the fact that I admitted it and stated that I needed to work on it rather than shoving it down and suppressing my emotions. He also apologized for being nasty to me, which I don't believe he needed to do. He did it because he is a good man and loves me, which makes me feel like I hit the jackpot in life. After supper, we finally discussed what had transpired with Diane and Sharon. I hadn't heard from either of them since the party, and my battle with Shaw had pushed the whole issue out of my mind. Sharon, on the other hand, had been continually texting Shaw, attempting to persuade him to apologize to Diane, who was supposedly distraught and stricken with grief as a result of Shaw's treatment of her. I had to work pretty hard not to roll my eyes when I read the messages Sharon sent. She was clearly attempting to guilt-trip him into apologizing to the woman. Sharon pretended that the cake and the entire almost anniversary farce were nothing more than a joke. There was nothing deeper behind it, but I called BS on it. This was a married man they were pulling this scam on. Surely, they had the intelligence to recognize how improper and insulting this was towards me. They did it on purpose since they wanted to humiliate me during the party. so they couldn't simply dismiss it by saying it was just a joke and pretend Shaw had overreacted. The hubris of them to claim that Shaw and I had gone too far or disrespected them by leaving the party was ridiculous. Shaw had previously been ignoring her communications, but when I got those messages today, we finally agreed to stop communicating with her. We'd had enough of her crap, and we didn't want any part of it anymore. 3 days ago, Shaw and I blocked Sharon from all of our social media accounts. Shaw also told his father that he didn't want to speak with his mother anymore. His father appreciated his decision because he knew Shaw's emotions, but he also refused to interfere. He loves his wife and knows he can't leave her, so he's remaining completely out of it, as he has for the past 5 years. I don't agree with my father-in-law's attitude, but I can't do anything about it. Everything had been running perfectly for the preceding 2 days, but then today, Shaw contacted me out of the blue and said he needed to run to the hospital. Apparently, his mother had fallen from the top of the steps and fractured her leg. Shaw's maternal uncle had informed him, and he fled immediately upon hearing the news. We both arrived at the hospital at roughly the same time, but before we could enter, Sharon stopped us in our tracks, and she was perfectly well. She and Diane had surprised us in the hospital's parking lot. Then they nonchalantly informed us that this was the only way to grab Shaw's attention because he had blocked them everywhere. They didn't expect me to show up with him. Instead of acknowledging me, they ignored me and began talking to Shaw as if they had done nothing wrong. Diane attempted to explain that everything she did at the party was a prank, and that she never meant to insult him. Sharon backed her up. Shaw allowed them to converse for a bit, and then, much to their surprise, he told his mother and ex off. Then he went away with me once more. Sharon started shouting at us as we got into our different cars, but we didn't stay around to hear what she had to say. I'm sure she was cursing at us, but it didn't matter. She lied to get to meet Shaw again, and I couldn't think of anything more manipulative than that. Shaw returned home because he was too stressed. I, on the other hand, needed to return to work. While at work, I received a call from an unknown number. Turned out to be Sharon. She screamed at me for 15 seconds before I finally disconnected the call. I'd merely been taken off guard while working, else I wouldn't have responded. All I heard were hand-picked swear words spoken at maximum volume. I had no idea why she was furious at me. I had nothing to do with Shaw's behavior. She had pushed her own son to that point, not me. Anyway, I blocked her and attempted to go on with my day. When I came back home at 6 p.m., I finally got to speak with Shaw. He told me that he had also blocked the rest of his mother's relatives, including his uncle, because it was obvious that they would go to any length to persuade him to forgive Sharon and speak with her. That's all we can do right now since they're not threatening us in any manner, and they're not stalking us on a regular basis, so a restraining order is not an option. Shaw also told his father about what happened today, but he still refuses to intervene. It's his choice, and Shaw adores his father, so I won't say anything right now. But personally, I don't think my father-in-law's behavior is a wonderful example of being a good father. The least he could do was speak to his wife and advocate for his son, but he won't even do it. Shaw adores his father, but the man has never stood up for him when it comes to Sharon. I've only kept my mouth shut out of respect for their relationship. Otherwise, I'd have a lot to say about how incredibly selfish his entire family is. They never think about anyone other than themselves. I will never understand how a man like Shaw could come from such a family. Hello, everyone. It's been a week since I last updated. Yesterday, Shaw and I decided to file a restraining order against Sharon and Diane because of something they did to me, or more precisely, attempted to do. 3 days ago, on Thursday, I was returning from work. On Thursdays, I normally go to a coffee shop near my office and purchase myself a frappuccino as a treat. Last Thursday, I was planning to do the same, but as soon as I walked into the shop, Diane and Sharon rose from their chairs where they had been waiting for me and rushed straight at me with their coffees. Before I could even respond, they both flung their drinks in my face. Then Diane took some whipped cream from her cup and put it into my hair. I was stunned. I just froze on the spot as everyone laughed. The baristas ran over to assist me clean up. They did their best to remove the muck off of me, so a big thanks to them for basically quitting their work to assist me. Even the other customers were patient and kind. When I finally got most of it off, my clothing were sticky and unpleasant, and my hair was horrible, but at least I was cleaner. Some of the other patrons inquired about me, and one even asked if I wanted to contact the cops, so I did. I reported Diane and Sharon and filed charges against them. However, they just received a fine, a slap on the wrist, because this was a misdemeanor and they had not physically hurt me, unless you consider my clothes, which I can't wear to work again due to fading brown coffee stains on the front. Nonetheless, we filed charges, and the incident is now on their record, which will strengthen our case. Shaw wanted to make this public, so he posted about it on social media so that more people would be aware and avoid Diane and his mother, but he changed his mind when he saw I just wanted to move on from this without any further complications. Honestly, that encounter shook me more than I expected. It may seem ridiculous, but it actually made me think. If things had escalated, it might have been far worse than them throwing coffee in my face. They could have really injured me if they wanted to. They were familiar with my routine thanks to my social media presence. They had my address. This could have gone extremely wrong. Shaw and I had been considering moving since we had a good financial year, but with what occurred, we will definitely be going. We had also been thinking about having children and we're going to start trying soon, but my in-laws will never meet my children. We've also formally cut off my father-in-law, who refused to intervene even after the coffee incident. Shaw got into a heated argument with him and eventually cut him off, and honestly, I am relieved. I'll never have to see or hear from these folks again. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My husband refused to take me to the hospital during labor, choosing lunch with his family instead. What should I do? I'm Selena, 30F, a new mother to Eddie, who is only a few days old. I wish I could say that my family is happy right now, but they aren't. Everyone around me is pointing the finger at me because I am now going through a divorce. I understand that being a single mother is difficult, but I would stop at nothing to rescue my son from the poisonous atmosphere he would have been in had I not left that marriage. I need some frank feedback because I've made some terrible blunders since high school. Robert and I had been dating and he had been kind to me. He planned dates, got me flowers, took me to get my nails done, and did all the other romantic things that girls like. His mother and sister were the only things he valued more than me, and I never objected to that. I suppose I interpreted it as a positive sign. I actually thought, oh well, he treats the women in his life so well. He is a real gentleman. If I ever get to marry him and become his wife, he will probably treat me even better. I can't even begin to explain how mistaken I was. The hunt ended the moment I married him. The taken-for-granted phase was the next stage. You don't realize emotional abuse all at once. You realize it over time. When you truly love that man, it's also quite hard to leave something like that. Now that I think about it, I should have recognized that Robert was incapable of setting limits or setting priorities, but love blinds you. Both my mother-in-law, Elle, and sister-in-law, Elle, wore long trains of white and were maids of honor at my wedding. Robert stated it didn't really matter and that I was ruining our special day by being sulky, when I brought up the fact that the bridesmaids and maid of honor were expected to wear pink. I should just concentrate on something else instead. But that was not all. They were in every photo, even interfering with the couple's candid shots. My husband said, "The kiddo is just having fun. Let her be," in response to the photographer's request that my SIL stop, since he was becoming tired with her in the frame. I'm confident the photos would look better. My SIL is not a child. Next year she will tie the knot at the age of 25. That day, I felt so ashamed that I came to the realization that I had been mistaken about Robert all along. I was already Robert's wife though, so it was too late. The one bright spot was that we were able to move in after our wedding because my cousin and his wife had given us a house as a wedding present. Although we didn't spend much time with my in-laws, Robert never stayed at home with me and instead visited them every weekend. He said that we would go on vacation after his sister was married, so that his sister and prospective brother-in-law could accompany us when I pointed out that we didn't even go on a honeymoon trip. It's important to note in this regard that his sister was unemployed and his future brother-in-law was a freeloader. She laughed it off when I tried to explain that marriage entails a lot of financial responsibility and that her brother would handle all of her financial obligations. I didn't bring up the topic again since I knew there wasn't much I could do about it without Robert's assistance, which he didn't provide. Yes, the warning signs were begging to be noticed, but I believed I could save our marriage. I have no idea why I chose to play Bob the Builder, but there I was, attempting to gain his favor by gaining the favor of his family. I chose to accompany Robert after realizing that he would not spend a single weekend with me. His mother and sister were not happy to see him the one and only time I visited. Even more unexpected was the presence of my sister-in-law, Sarah, 26F, and her freeloading fiancé, Dylan, 26M. In essence, I was the only one who was never invited to participate. I explained that I had come to surprise them and that I had brought a cake with me. As though Sarah had told the greatest joke in the world, they all chuckled when my sister-in-law added, "A nasty surprise, I see." Beatrice, 56F, Robert's mother, stated that they didn't have enough food for me because they didn't expect strangers, because this was family time. Since I was his wife, I expected Robert to remark something about how much more of a part of the family I am than Dylan. But instead, he was staring out the window and was totally absorbed in his thoughts, or at least acting that way. Robert gave me the car keys stoically after I informed him I would drive home. His mother waved goodbye with a smile and advised me not to act like a jealous child and bother Robert in that way. I cried all the way home and left without saying anything because I was so embarrassed. The following day, Robert took me out to dinner at my favorite continental restaurant after returning home that day with flowers and chocolates. Therefore, he was aware of the abhorrent treatment. He simply decided not to confront it. Robert treated me like a queen for the entire week that followed, until the following weekend, at which point he left for his contented family. Until the following weekend, he would return and overcompensate. After a few months of marriage, this occurred, and even the preferential treatment ceased. Dismissal took its place. He would blame me for not understanding his responsibilities to his family and say that I should be accustomed to his Saturday breakfast with his family by now. If I ever mentioned how lonely I felt on the weekends and wanted to spend time with him, he frequently accused me of exaggerating. I told my mother about my extreme dissatisfaction. According to Mom, if we had a child, Robert might be more involved and at home, and I might not feel as alone. I reprimanded her and told her that having a child would be a very selfish motive, but she managed to get the notion into my head, and I continued to consider it. I might have to drop the child off at my mom's before I left for work because we would both be working parents, but on the weekends, I would be able to spend a lot of time with the child. Wouldn't the baby's father want the same thing? I asked my husband whether he thought we were ready to become parents, as I gradually developed a kind of baby fever. He was ecstatic and said that his mother had even hinted at this. He shrugged and stated that his mother was growing old and ready to be a grandma when I asked him why she wanted us to have a child. Therefore, it would be beneficial to have a young man who could look after her. I informed him that I didn't believe he was ready to be a father and that he couldn't use our child to care for his mother. The baby conversation was out of the question after our argument. I'm not sure what changed, but all of a sudden, Robert began spending his weekends at home. He resumed his pre-marriage treatment of me, even purchasing tickets to the Maldives for our much-postponed honeymoon. During our week-long honeymoon in the Maldives, Robert made me feel incredibly unique and adored. He claimed he wanted to make amends for hurting my feelings. I fell straight into his trap, foolish as I was. We found out I was pregnant after returning from our vacation. It delighted Robert. Robert persuaded me that we were prepared to become parents despite my reservations. During the first 3 months of my pregnancy, he took exceptional care of me, taking me to the doctor, making sure I took my vitamins, staying at home on the weekends, ordering all the food I wanted, and shopping for our unborn child. Things returned to their pre-vacation state in the 4th month. He had gotten me pregnant and ensured that I would do all in my power to avoid having the baby. That was the act's entire purpose. I was really depressed in the weeks before my labor. My mom came over to look after me, but she always blamed Robert's actions on his wealth, which was all that mattered to her. The 3rd week of December was my due date. Mom attended her brother's funeral 2 weeks prior to my birth. I was unable to attend my uncle's funeral because the due date was so near. I pleaded with my hubby to spend the weekend at home. My uncle's passing made me sad and lonely. I didn't want to be at home by myself on that particular day. I stated this to my husband and he responded, "Sel, you are going to be a mother and make a lot of sacrifices in the future. So being alone for a day is nothing compared to the sacrifices that you have to make. I will suggest that you better sleep it off. I will see you tonight. Don't wait up for me. I will have dinner with them. Bye honey, take care. Remember, you have to take care of yourself for our little Eddie." He took the car keys and drove off without even waiting for my answer. That particular day I was feeling very ill, so I went to lie down and dozed off for almost an hour. I woke up with excruciating cramping. I was horrified to discover that my water had burst when I noticed that the bed was damp. I contacted my spouse right away. Before answering, he hung up the phone twice. His voice was absolutely irritated when I heard my water break. I actually screamed. He said, "So why are you wasting time calling me? Call the hospital or something, I don't know, man. Gosh, you are a grown woman. Pull yourself together and face the situation. I am literally between brunch with everybody. Even Dylan's parents are here. Stop calling me." The line died. After staring at the phone I was holding, I went outside onto the street. I couldn't even drive myself to the hospital since Robert had stolen the car. A man stopped when I flagged down a car. He held the door open for me. In a hurry, I was taken to the hospital. Mr. Singh, the gentleman, completed all the papers and asked if I wanted him to make a phone call. He came and informed me that no one was answering after I gave him my husband's phone. In that instant, a stranger named Mr. Singh stood up. Eddie was the only person who came to see me after I gave birth. He brought me chicken wings, bananas, and baby outfits. I started to cry, since my uncle was unable to be present in person. I had the impression that his spirit had sent this man. Mr. Singh gave me a pat on the hand and congratulated me. He muttered a prayer for Eddie after I handed him over to him. I reminded him of his daughter, he said, and I should call him if I ever needed anything. I got his card from him. I noticed that he practiced divorce law. I believed that all of the signals were coming from my guardian angel. I told Mr. Singh without hesitation that I was looking for a place to stay. I desired a home of my own. He offered to transfer me into his penthouse, saying, "You wouldn't have to worry about the rent until I started working." He turned back before leaving, saying, "By the way, you can call me Uncle." That evening, my hubby called. In the interim, I didn't answer, but I did see it ring. I requested the nurses not to tell my husband that I was there in case he called, since I didn't want him to know. They concurred. My spouse texted me to inquire which hospital I was at. I didn't respond. I was questioned by the nurses if they ought to contact social services. I requested that they refrain. The physicians and nurses were incredibly understanding and nice. My mother would undoubtedly tell Robert where I was, so I didn't even answer her phone. When Uncle Singh arrived the following day, he informed me that everything was prepared for my move-in. Since his daughter used to live there, he claimed there wasn't much to prepare anyhow. It was not long ago that she left the country to work somewhere in Germany. He claimed that because he missed his daughter so much, it would be pleasant to have someone live in her apartment. His wife was equally excited to meet me, he informed me. I was driven to their tidy and lovely apartment by Uncle Singh. Auntie quickly began discussing ways to make things comfortable for me, even though she was overweight. I kept telling them that all I wanted was to stay there, but they kept asking if I wanted anything. After telling them all that had transpired, I requested that my uncle initiate the divorce process. I replied that I had never believed in anything more when he questioned whether I was certain about it. I was instructed by my uncle to text my spouse about the birth of my son, so I sent Robert an SMS about it. He informed me that I had been really irresponsible and that we needed to go meet his family right now with Eddie. He had the audacity to believe that I would take my son to meet his toxic family. I told him after a period of silence. He continued, "Don't be a kid. We have to take Eddie to his godmother." When I questioned him who made the decision to name Robert's sister as the godmother, he told me to stop being funny since that was how it was always meant to be. I lost my composure and began to scream, "You know what's ridiculous? It's you. You are the damn joker. I had to take a lift to the damn hospital and give birth alone. If you loved me and your son, you would have rushed to us. You are so damn selfish and your family is crazy. You are not going to be a part of my son's life. You will hear from my lawyer soon. I am divorcing you." When I hung up, I was furious. Auntie seemed somewhat worried. She said that my spouse was a child and not a man. When I hung up, for the first time in a long time, I laughed. When my mother called, she went on and on about how awful I was and how Robert had called to let her know what had happened. She informed me that because I had taken my son away from them, their family was pursuing charges. It seems that I am a self-centered mother who only cares about herself, so I should be hauled to court and have my son taken away from me. They claimed that I was unfit to be a mother because of my depression. I informed my mother that I didn't care about their opinions since I was confident I would win the case and be granted sole custody of my son. I ended the call and made the decision not to answer any more calls from my relatives. In order to augment my income, I began applying for freelance jobs, even though I had a job already. I needed more if I wanted to provide for my son comfortably. My phone began buzzing nonstop with texts all of a sudden. Dylan's entire family and my in-laws were sending me hateful texts. They were calling me a villain in derogatory terms since I had destroyed their family. The only thing that is saving you right now is the fact that you don't know your address. Otherwise, we would totally come over and teach you a lesson, you stupid cuss words, they said, threatening to break into my house and take my son by force. Auntie grabbed the phone out of my hand as I was shivering from reading these texts and said, "You're going to eat and get some rest. I will look after Eddie till you wake up. You are not going to check your phone and not stress. Your uncle will take care of everything. When you wake up, your uncle will take you to the police station to lodge a complaint. We need to file a restraining order." I really wanted to vent, and I figured that putting it in writing would help me gather my thoughts. This was written in the bathtub during a lengthy soak. I'm going to bed shortly. The question of whether I made the right decision in preventing Robert from meeting Eddie, however, has been the one that has been plaguing me the most. Will this have an impact on his child's brain? I'm not sure whether Robert's presence would have had a negative impact on him because I don't think he is a good role model in any way. Update 1. Despite my reluctance to acknowledge it, I have been reading your comments, and you are correct. Both divorce and the loss of a parent will inevitably affect Eddie in some way. Simply said, I'm happy Uncle and Auntie Singh will show the baby the affection he needs. Yesterday, I spoke with Uncle's daughter. She works as a scientist. I was explaining the situation that led me to her apartment to her. She concluded by saying that God orchestrated the gathering. She was quite concerned about her parents, but for the first time in a long time, she saw her mother truly happy now that I was there. Don't worry about the rent yet, she said. To my astonishment, she returned my gratitude after I did. I feel so fortunate that I cannot express it to you all. Eddie will look up to Uncle Singh as a positive male role model. I've given it a lot of thought, and I believe I will be as honest as possible in my responses to Eddie's challenging questions. I'll make an effort to teach him how to be a man rather than a pet of his mother. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. Update 2. Let's get to the update. Uncle and I went to file the restraining order after I woke up from my nap. I can state with confidence that Eddie is in good hands because Auntie has been taking excellent care of him. Since the restraining order was filed, there's been a lot of calm, but I think I caught a glimpse of Dylan today as I headed to work. I'm not sure if this is just a hallucination or what. I'm not sure. I might have paranoia. I don't want to cause Uncle or Auntie any unnecessary anxiety. Therefore, I haven't told them about this. Technically, there is nothing preventing Dylan from attempting to get in touch with me because the restraining order has been filed against Robert's family. I don't want them to learn my residence. I'll keep you all informed. Update 3. Hello, everyone. My penthouse was egged last night. I was by myself. Auntie and Uncle had gone home for the night. I rushed to Eddie's sleeping quarters and embraced him. He was sobbing uncontrollably and really frightened. I was secretly experiencing a panic attack because I felt so frightened and constrained. I attempted rocking Eddie back to sleep after the egging ceased. After 15 long minutes, since I was immobile, I placed Eddie on my bed and lay awake with him after he fell asleep. When Auntie arrived to meet me the following morning, she was in a complete panic. She wanted me to live with them in their home, but I informed her that it wouldn't make a difference because their house will be egged the next time. Although I believe my hypothesis that Dylan had followed me was correct, we are unable to bring a direct case against him because the law does not allow for speculation. We have accused unidentified individuals of vandalism. As I write this, Uncle is installing cameras and a new security system. Next week is when we have our court hearing. I'll keep you all informed. Update 4. I'm exhausted. This will only be a brief update. All I want is for the hearing to end at this point. The drama is becoming excessive. Dylan attempted to break into the house last night. The security system alerted 911 right away, and he was apprehended. He had a black balaclava on. The police took him away. Upon questioning, it was discovered that they intended to abduct Eddie. Then custody would go to Robert, and I might be seen as a negligent mother. However, the entire game was altered by the fact that he was captured. They have absolutely no chance of winning now, and more significantly, some of them will be going to jail. Update 5. The kidnapping was rejected by Robert's family. Yes, I'm not at all surprised. Dylan was completely enamored with Sarah, but she has since left him. My uncle told me that no one ever paid Dylan a visit while he was in detention. Uncle gave Robert a lot of attention throughout our court session today. It appears that things will work out for us. Robert rushed up to me and held my hand as I was leaving after the hearing. He wanted me to move back with him and our children after admitting his sins. I was on the verge of giving in, but then I recalled all the times I had done so, and everything had simply returned to normal. I asked him to do his foolish stunts on someone else after taking my hand away from his. I told him that he needed to mature and that it was unrealistic to expect a man who didn't act like an adult to raise a child. It is unheard of for a child to raise another child. Is it not? Microphone drops. Before he could say anything further, I hopped into Uncle's car and drove off. I gave myself a mental fist pump in anticipation of this incredible return. LOL. How do you all feel about my return? Wish me luck at the upcoming hearing as well. Can you guess who received Eddie's custody and the majority of the child support? Selena, your girl is the one. Robert was granted visiting rights, that's all. I'm not going to appeal since I don't think it will be pleasant to deny my child his father. I don't want Eddie to grow up and blame my egotistical drive to win for his dad's unfamiliar appearance, even though I am positive that we would win if I did. This is exactly what I told Robert, but I added a caveat. He must never take Eddie to see his sister and grandma. I won't think twice about removing his visiting privileges if I discover anything suspicious happening behind my back. In addition to my usual career, I have secured a highly lucrative freelance position. Additionally, I am establishing a blog for new single mothers, which is becoming very popular. I already have some sponsors. I invite you to see my blog as well. I can't express how thrilled I am to be a new mother right now. Motherhood is going nicely for me. Being Eddie's mother makes me happy. In addition, my mother has returned. She finally believes that I made the correct decision in leaving that marriage after the abduction attempt. She thanked Uncle and Auntie excessively and apologized to me. She cried as she saw her grandchild for the first time. She cursed Dylan while cradling Eddie. She expressed her disbelief that someone would genuinely attempt to harm a child in such a terrible way. For a youngster, nothing hurts more than being taken away from its mother. I wholeheartedly concur. Dylan is still on trial. Uncle claims that he will undoubtedly go to jail given the evidence against him. Sarah, meantime, is already married to a wealthy elderly man she met at a party. It seems that after just 1 week of dating, they are getting married. A friend of mine who lives close to Robert's residence is providing me with updates on their family. All the tea is going to your daughter. LOL. Oh, and I had requested that Robert vacate our home. Come on, it was a present from my family. Therefore, it's only right that he moves out. This week, he moved out. Therefore, I'm going back to my former residence. I can't even begin to express how grateful I am to the Singh family. For 2 months, I remained with them at no cost. They refused to accept my attempt to pay them rent. They only collected a month's rent in the end, claiming that this was my uncle's fee for defending me and that they would not want any more money from me. Update 6. I apologize for not responding to you all sooner. God. Being a mother is a full-time job. I know, it's been 6 months. I'm grateful for my mother and aunt. When I leave for work, they alternately watch Eddie. These two ladies have been a huge assistance. After returning home and enjoying some delicious and nourishing meals, I play with Eddie till he falls asleep. Every weekend, my uncle comes to visit us, and I also got to meet his daughter who recently moved here from Germany. She is as kind as her parents, and she spent a week with us. I asked her to be my son's godmother just before she left for Germany. She sobbed uncontrollably and gave Eddie and me hugs. Eddie's godfather is my cousin, who gave the house as a gift. He wasn't shocked when I told him what had happened over the past 6 months. He claimed that he had reservations and constantly felt immature around Robert. He apologized for not being able to support me during that time because I was unable to contact him because he was out of the country. It wouldn't have helped even if I had succeeded in doing it. Eddie has experienced a lot of firsts in the last few months. After learning to roll over, he attempted to crawl. He spoke his first word as well. He really enjoys his Bumblebee soft toy, but my mom says it's simply a random sound he made. Every month, Robert continues to provide new items. It felt incredibly weird when he came to visit us last week. The fact that the man I loved so deeply is now a stranger also kind of hurts me, but that's life, I suppose. Even though bad things happen, one must remain optimistic. I let Robert play with Eddie by himself. It was a smart move because I could do a lot of work while Robert took care of the infant. Robert had put baby Eddie to sleep before I finished all of my job. He appeared incredibly small and frail as he lay on Robert's breast. Robert was partly sleeping, and the thought of what might have happened made me very sad. According to my therapist, it's normal to feel this way and not feel bad about being sad for Robert. After gathering myself, I took a photo of the father and son. I framed that photo and gave it to Robert as a birthday present. After giving it a thorough examination, he thanked me. Being a father has, in my opinion, caused him to undergo a major transformation. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I was sidelined by my family's favoritism toward my adopted sister until her shocking true identity was revealed at my birthday party. Family trouble has plagued me 35F for as long as I can remember, but recent events have now gotten to the breaking point. I feel like I'm drowning in hurt, uncertainty, and hatred right now. So I'm hoping anyone who has experienced a similar circumstance may offer some guidance or insight to put things in perspective. My adopted sister, 34F, is just 1 year younger than myself. She was adopted by our parents when she was a newborn, and I have spent my entire childhood with her. That would seem to bring us together like a couple, but the truth is far from that romantic notion. It was evident from my very first recollections that our parents gave preference to my sister. They lavished her with attention, gave her everything she desired, and appeared to listen intently to everything she said. When I proudly showed my mother a sketch I had done when I was 5 years old, she dismissed me since my sister was reciting the alphabet for the 100th time. Although it might not seem like much, it was a sign of a pattern that would shape our family's dynamics for many years to come. The distance between us just got wider as we got older. My sister had trouble reading in elementary school, and our parents worked with her for hours every night. Even though I did exceptionally well in school, I seldom ever got more than a passing good job on my report cards. My sister had a dance recital in middle school, so my parents were not there at the award ceremony when I won the scientific fair. That was always the case. Her wants, accomplishments, and hardships all came before mine. I don't want to imply that I was abused or neglected in the conventional sense. Our fundamental necessities were always satisfied, including having a roof over our heads and food on the table. However, the emotional neglect was genuine and extremely distressing. Early on, I discovered that being flawless, achieving, and excelling was the only way to garner any attention in our home. So I did just that with an almost obsessive zeal. I immersed myself into my studies in high school. I was cooped up in my room preparing for AP exams and filling out my college applications while my sister was out at parties and hanging out with friends. It was worthwhile. I received a half scholarship to a prestigious university. This will finally make my parents proud, I thought. However, instead of applauding my accomplishment on the day I departed for college, they fussed more about how my sister would handle my absence. College was enlightening. I was evaluated entirely on my own merits, not in relation to my sister. For the first time in my life, I made true friends. Friends who appreciated me for who I was, and I flourished both socially and academically. I obtained a position at a prominent company after graduating with honors. With unwavering resolve, I ascended the corporate ladder during the ensuing 10 years. My inner voice, which still yearned for my parents' praise, propelled me to every advancement and accomplishment. I'm pleased of what I've accomplished and currently work for a Fortune 500 firm in a senior management role. However, that pride is constantly laced with resentment because my family never seems to be satisfied with whatever I achieve. In contrast, my sister has never truly settled into a profession and has alternated between jobs. She still resides with our parents who provide her with both emotional and financial support. My parents may have been pleased by my accomplishment, but it appears that it has just strengthened their partiality for my sister. They constantly offer justifications for her lack of focus, such as, "She's just trying to find her passion," or, "Not everyone needs to climb the corporate ladder to be happy." At the same time, if my achievements are recognized at all, they are frequently greeted with a lackluster congratulation. Our family relationships have been damaged in every way because of this dynamic. Family get-togethers are a minefield of barely veiled bitterness and passive-aggressive remarks. I've made an effort to discuss my feelings with my parents, but they consistently brush them off as envious or too sensitive. As for my sister, she seems to take great pride in her preferred position and frequently makes disparaging comments about me being married to my job or too busy for family. I've been in therapy for years in an attempt to resolve these problems, boost my self-esteem, and establish sound boundaries, but every encounter with my family seems to set me back, regardless of how much progress I made. I've thought of severing all connections, but it would be devastating to lose my family, dysfunctional as they are. This leads me to last week's events, which have caused me to reevaluate every aspect of my relationships with my family. As is customary, our parents threw my sister a lavish birthday celebration. Friends, extended family, and even some of her former classmates were invited. With catered food, an open bar, and even a live band, the house was decorated as though it were a wedding ceremony. As a comparison, last month's birthday was celebrated with a little dinner for the four of us, during which most of the discussion focused on my sister's most recent business venture, a pet-related social media app that she believes will be the next big thing. After approximately 2 minutes, my parents' eyes drifted away as I attempted to discuss a significant project I'm overseeing at work. I made an effort to blend in at the party. I tried my best to encourage my sister on her special day by interacting with family members in a courteous manner and striking up little conversations. However, as the evening went on, I sensed the old bitterness rising within me. It wasn't just the extravagant celebration. It was also the way our parents showered her with praise, how family members inquired about her life while hardly noticing mine, and how she absorbed all the attention as if it were her natural inheritance. In an attempt to calm the anxiety attack I could see coming on, I found myself withdrawing to a corner and drinking a glass of wine. When she saw how upset I was, a cousin came to see how I was doing. With sincere concern in her voice, she inquired, "Are you okay?" For the first time that evening, someone had taken the effort to inquire about my well-being. I started to reply, but my sister's voice broke through the throng before I could. She raised her voice and tapped her glass with a spoon, saying, "Attention, everyone. I'd like to make a toast." As everyone's attention was drawn to my sister, the room became quiet. She was a little shaky on her feet, and her cheeks were flushed, which indicated that she had consumed a significant amount of alcohol. As she began her address, she was still able to put on a convincing smile. Initially, it appeared to be a standard birthday greeting. She toasted our parents for their love and support, thanked everyone for attending, and conveyed her appreciation for the celebration. Her tone then shifted, and I got a shiver down my back. "I'm especially grateful to Mom and Dad," she said with a tone of voice that I had never heard before. "I've always received greater treatment from them than their own daughter." Just take a peek at this celebration. When was the last time they threw my sister a party like this? As everyone in the room turned to stare at me, I felt my face heat up. But my sister wasn't finished. But I guess that's because I've always been the better daughter, she added, sounding a little slurred by the champagne. Yes, my sister has a nice career and makes a lot of money. But who do mom and dad truly love in the end? Who makes their life happier? It's not the icy, work-driven automaton who hardly has time for family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The room was still, with the exception of a few painful coughs and my sister's voice, which seemed to get louder by the second. You know, it's funny, she said with a tiny wobble. Everyone constantly praised my sister's intelligence and her potential for success. But look at us now. I'm here with family and friends who genuinely care about me, while she's by herself, married to her job. I turned to our parents in the hopes that they would intervene and put an end to this vicious act. However, they only sat there, appearing uneasy and doing nothing to stop it. I had never felt more alone in my life than I did at that precise time. My sister continued to babble, criticizing every element of my life, including my appearance, the fact that I didn't have a romantic partner, and even the suggestion that I succeeded in my work by sleeping my way to the top. I felt myself getting smaller with every word, years of repressed hurt and rage threatening to blow up. My aunt, our mother's sister, stepped up just as I was about to burst into tears and thought I could take no more. She had a determined and angry expression on her face. I was standing when she approached and gave me an envelope. Her voice broke the tension in the room as she stated, "Don't open this until I'm done talking." Her eyes were flaming as she turned to face the throng. The scene that followed resembled a scene from a soap opera. According to my aunt, my sister wasn't taken from a foster home. She was her biological daughter. It seems that my aunt wasn't prepared to become a mother when she became pregnant suddenly in her early 20s. She requested my parents to adopt the child instead of ending the pregnancy. I thought I was doing the right thing, my aunt continued, her voice trembling with passion. I believed that my sister and her husband would provide a better life for my child. I believed she would develop into a nice, caring person who was appreciative of her life. However, instead, she turned to face my sister, who had turned completely white. Instead, you've developed into a conceited, self-centered brat who believes it's acceptable to make fun of her sister in public. I've watched this familial dynamic unfold for years, and I can no longer keep quiet about it. Chaos broke out in the room. Screaming, my sister demanded to know whether it was true. Our parents were shooting daggers at my aunt while attempting to soothe her. Family members were pointing and muttering. And me? I felt as though the earth had vanished from beneath me as I stood there, gripping the envelope. Once more, my aunt's voice broke through the cacophony. My aunt expressed her dismay, saying, "I always thought that if my daughter was being raised by my sister, she would grow up to be a wonderful person. But obviously I was mistaken. No good person would ever attempt to make their sister look as bad as you just did." Then, turning to face me, she instructed me to open the packet. There was a blank check inside. My aunt told me to fill in whatever amount you want. I had planned to give this to her as a birthday gift, but after seeing how she's turned out, I have no interest in rewarding that behavior. My aunt then left, leaving a startled quiet behind her. It was short-lived. In an attempt to take the check out of my hands, my sister lunged at me. She was so hysterical that our parents had to physically restrain her as she shouted and sobbed. It was more than I could handle. I fled to my room, shut the door, and sobbed. Years of suppressing my hurt and bitterness and feeling inferior came rushing out. I ignored the banging on my door and the muted arguments coming from downstairs while I sobbed for hours. A week has passed, and I'm still unsure about what to do. With the exception of needs, I have not left my room. Despite our parents' attempts to speak with me, I find it difficult to confront them. My sister has alternated between begging for forgiveness and the check, of course, and sending me angry messages. There's a part of me that wants to cash that check, go, and never return. I've tried all my life to win the love and acceptance of people who don't seem to be able to give it to me. Perhaps I should give up trying? Perhaps it's time for me to prioritize myself. However, I also have a fear of losing my family. Despite their dysfunction, they are the only family I have ever known. It's terrifying to consider living without them, going on vacation by yourself, and having no one to call in case of an emergency. In addition, I'm experiencing a lot of mixed feelings regarding my sister. On the one hand, I'm upset with her for her actions during the party and for years of subtly insulting people. However, I can't help but feel a little sorry for them. It must be really upsetting to learn that you're adopted, especially in such a humiliating and public manner. Does that justify her actions? Not at all. However, it makes matters more difficult. Regarding my parents, I find it hard to comprehend how they could have watched while my sister sobbed at me. Were they simply taken aback? Or does their lack of response reveal their true feelings for me? Years of emotional neglect and favoritism. How can I even start? I feel as though I'm at a fork in the road, and I'm unsure of which way to go. Should I make an effort to repair these damaged relationships? Can something wholesome be constructed from such a poisonous base? Or do I go on and attempt to start over, one in which I'm not always looking for unfulfilled approval? Reddit, I'm lost. I've tried my entire life to gain the love and acceptance of my family, only to be rejected and humiliated in the process. From here, how do I proceed? Should I accept that certain families cannot be repaired? Or is there any chance for reconciliation? Any insight or counsel would be greatly valued. I feel as though I'm drowning in hurt and confusion, and I'm no longer sure which way is up. Update 1. 2 days have passed since the terrible birthday celebration, and I'm still getting over it all. My aunt came to visit me this morning. As she continued to discuss the adoption, she appeared worn out. When she became pregnant, she was young and afraid. It seemed like the ideal option for my parents, who had been trying for another child to keep everyone safe. They decided to keep it a secret. For years, she had been accumulating money with the intention of transferring it to my sister when she was ready to be self-sufficient. She came to the realization that I was more deserving after the party. She gave me an empty check. I felt both guilty for stealing something intended for my sister and justified that someone recognized the unfair treatment. Despite my attempts to decline, my aunt persisted, claiming it was back pay for emotional labor. That evening, I decided something. I checked into a hotel across town, packed my luggage, and left my folks a note. I needed time to reflect. I ignored the calls and messages from my relatives throughout the course of the following several days. I performed some introspection, talked to my therapist, and sought advice from a financial advisor regarding the check. I sent my folks an email 5 days later. I assured them I needed time but was secure. I laid out my requirements for mending our relationship. They had to admit to the years of partiality. All of us go to family therapy. My sister apologizes in public. They start treating us equally and cease condoning her actions. They instantly responded that they were relieved and asked me to come home so we could discuss. We decided to get together at a cafe close to my hotel. It was a stressful encounter. My parents agreed to treatment and pledged to improve our ties as if they were sorry. They expressed reluctance to publicly apologize for my sister's adoption, claiming it was traumatic. I refused to back down and insisted that she issue a public apology for her actions. With an uneasy truce, we departed. Everything but the public apology was approved by my parents, who indicated they would talk to my sister about it. Over the following few days, the negotiations went on. At first, my sister sent irate messages and refused to apologize, but as I persisted, her tone started to shift. She apologized via text, saying she was unhappy and intoxicated at the party. I retorted that the apology should not only be for the party event but also for years of nasty behavior. More irate texts followed, and then there was stillness. My parents attempted to mediate the situation by offering solutions like a written statement or an apology limited to the family. I was conflicted. As this went on, there was a part of me that wanted to be forceful and insist on the respect I so well earned. Another part wondered if fighting was worth it because it was so exhausting. I was reminded by my therapist that putting my health first is not selfish. Setting boundaries, she stated, is necessary for healthy relationships. I've made the decision to offer my family one final opportunity to comply with my demands. I'll use my aunt's check to start over somewhere else, away from family strife and past hurts, if they are unable to. I'm feeling both nervous and optimistic as I get ready to give this order. Whatever occurs will influence my life and relationships in the future. I'm hoping I'm making the correct decision. I will update you. I appreciate everyone's support. Knowing that I'm not fighting this battle alone is reassuring. Update 2. Since my last update, which was a week ago, things have drastically changed. I've made the decision to revoke the terms I established for reconciliation, but not for the reasons you may expect. After arguing with my family for days, I came to the conclusion that their attempts at compromise were more about minimizing the harm than showing sincere regret. Increasingly manipulative, my sister's apology texts alternated between gaslighting and guilt-tripping. "You're tearing this family apart," she'd write, and then, "I don't even remember what I said at the party. Are you sure you're not exaggerating?" In the meantime, my parents persisted in trying to reach a solution that seemed to ignore the true problems rather than deal with them. They objected to the concept of admitting their part in creating this unhealthy relationship and instead proposed a private family gathering where my sister would provide an apology. I started to lose sleep, check my phone frequently, and get nervous whenever it buzzed. As the pressure increased, it became evident that my mental health was suffering as a result of this negotiation. At that point, I decided to remove my conditions, not because I believe they are irrational, but rather because I now understand that meaningful change cannot be coerced or negotiated. My family just isn't there yet, and it must originate internally. I wrote my parents a quick email. "I'm rescinding my previous conditions. I need space and time to heal. Please respect my wishes and don't contact me for a while." They reacted with astounding speed. The volume of calls, texts, and voicemails on my phone surged. I had to ask security to take them out of my office once they arrived. They also reached out to a few of my pals in an attempt to persuade me to return home. "We love you. Please come home. How can you do this to us? And your sister is devastated. She's not eating" were among the desperate, angry, and manipulative texts they sent. Emotional warfare has been going on nonstop. Sometimes the guilt is unbearable. Sometimes I question whether I'm exaggerating or whether I should just go home and try to forget everything. However, I also recall the years I spent feeling invisible, having my accomplishments disregarded, and seeing my sister consistently given preference. To assist me deal with the stress, I've started going to my therapist twice a week. By borrowing my family's phone numbers and configuring email filters, she has been assisting me in establishing boundaries. Although it seems drastic, it's essential for my mental health at the moment. My workplace has turned into a haven for me. To avoid returning to my empty flat, I've poured myself into tasks and stayed late at work. Some of my coworkers have expressed concern after noticing the difference in me. Even if I can't adequately describe the circumstances, I appreciate their support. I still haven't paid my aunt's check, though. As a continual reminder of the decision I must make, it rests in my desk drawer. To show that I don't need their money or approval, I feel like tearing it up. Some view it as a lifeline, an opportunity to start over somewhere new. I've begun looking at employment prospects in other cities and even other nations. It is both exciting and frightening to consider a whole transformation. Was it truly possible for me to start afresh and leave everything behind? I'm taking things day by day. For the time being, I'm getting better at accepting the unease that comes with uncertainty and having faith that I'll know what to do when the time comes. Certain days are more difficult than others. Sometimes I miss my family so terribly that it hurts my body. However, there are also unexpectedly peaceful moments when I notice that my breathing is easier than it has been in years. I am aware that this voyage is far from finished. There will be more emotional obstacles to conquer and more challenging choices to make. But I'm prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. It feels right, but it's also unpleasant and uncomfortable. I appreciate all of your ongoing help and guidance. Having this place to process and share is more important than you may realize. When I have more to report, I'll provide another update. I'm concentrating on getting better and finding my identity outside of my family's shadow in the interim. Update 3. 3 weeks have passed since my last report, and things have significantly worsened. My sister unexpectedly showed up at the door last Saturday when we were visiting my aunt. We were taken aback. She stormed in, obviously drunk and furious, yelling, "You've ruined everything. You are attempting to take my life after stealing my mother." The stench of alcohol was overpowering, and her eyes were crazy. My aunt and I had to hold her back as she lunged at me. Allegations were made by my sister, who said I had always been envious and had turned everyone against her. Even after everything that had transpired, the hatred in her voice was startling. I was shocked by my aunt's response. Her normally composed manner had vanished. "You need to leave now," she said forcefully, her face hardening as she dragged my sister out of the house. My sister resumed her tirade outside, attracting neighbors' attention. "My mother is not you," I heard her shout at my aunt. "I was exposed to you. You can no longer act as though you care." A few of the neighbors threatened to contact law enforcement. My sister eventually pulled away in her automobile. My aunt was clearly shaken. Within, she revealed that she struggled with guilt over the adoption during our hours-long conversation. She had believed that telling the truth would fix things, but she now understood that the harm was much more extensive. "I believed I was acting appropriately," she muttered. "However, I might have just made things messy for everyone. Wide-ranging effects have resulted from the occurrence." Later, my parents called in a rage, accusing me of trying to ruin our family and inciting my aunt against my sister. I tried to explain things to them, but they refused. Members of the extended family have taken sides, causing the family to become severely divided. What started out as a private issue has turned into a full-fledged family conflict. The intensity of it all overwhelms me. I feel guilty, even though I know it's not my fault. But I also want to withdraw and start over somewhere else. Because of my sister's condition, my aunt is worried about my safety and has proposed that I remain with her for a bit. I'm thinking about it, but I'm afraid it could make things worse. I'm making an effort to remain somewhat normal throughout this whole ordeal. I try to look after myself, go to work, and see my therapist. However, this familial conflict is a continual burden. I wonder if this will have any repercussions. Is it possible for a family to overcome such ingrained animosity and rage? Is it better to give up, or is it worth trying? I'm trying to avoid getting pulled back into the pandemonium, and I'm concentrating on my own recovery for the time being. Even though it's difficult, I'm committed to finding a solution, whether or not my family is on board. I appreciate your unwavering support, everyone. You don't realize how much it matters. When I can, I'll provide another update, ideally with more positive news. Update 4. A month has passed since my last update, and I've made some decisions that will change my life. I came to the realization that I needed to take immediate action to safeguard my mental health and create a future for myself following the tumultuous incident with my sister at my aunt's place. I've poured myself fully into my profession, asking my supervisor if I may move to another location to work for our company or take on more responsibility. I was surprised by how supportive she was. I'm currently in the running for a senior management job that would take me across the nation. It's thrilling as well as frightening. Along with the opportunity to oversee a large project, the new position offers a substantial wage increase. To get ready for this change, I've been working 12-hour days, going to every training session I can, and networking frantically. My increased zeal has sparked curiosity among my coworkers, but I've been able to sidestep most inquiries. A few close coworkers are well aware of my predicament and have been tremendously helpful. Regarding the money part, I ultimately decided on my aunt's check. I made the decision to cash it after giving it a lot of thought and spoke with a financial advisor. I was able to reframe it as an investment in my future, one free from toxic family dynamics, with the assistance of my therapist. I've secured an apartment in my prospective city using a portion of the funds. With a view of the city skyline, it's a compact, contemporary space. I've put the remainder into a diversified portfolio. I feel autonomous and financially secure for the first time in my life. The final separation from my family has been the most difficult aspect. All of their phone numbers and email addresses have been blocked by me. I've requested that my aunt not forward any of their texts. I know it's essential for my recovery, but it's been excruciating, like cutting off a piece of myself. Of course, there are periods of uncertainty. I occasionally feel inclined to phone late at night in an attempt to make amends. However, I then recall the years of gaslighting, the ongoing sense of inferiority, and the violent altercation at my aunt's house. It makes me more determined to keep going. I recently began seeing a new therapist who focuses on estrangement and familial trauma. She has been assisting me in overcoming my sadness and guilt. To replace the family-centered customs I've left behind, we're concentrating on establishing a new network of support and developing new ones. Additionally, I've joined a support group for those who are separated from their relatives. It has been both upsetting and consoling to hear their stories. I've learned that I'm not the only one going through this and that you can have a happy life without the family you were born into. Regarding my aunt, we have kept up our friendship while setting clear limits. She doesn't try to act as a mediator and accepts my decision to break off contact with the rest of the family. Although her assistance has been priceless, I'm careful not to rely on her too much. I feel a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension about the future. Though intimidating, the idea of starting over in a new place with a demanding new job and no family safety net is also freeing. I feel for the first time that I am living my life according to my own terms, free from societal norms and familial expectations. I've begun pursuing new interests and pastimes that I never had time for while I was preoccupied with family matters. I've joined a local hiking group, I'm learning how to cook, and I'm even thinking about painting. I've not felt this at peace in years. As I pack up my flat and get ready for this new phase. Yes, I am saddened by what I have lost, but I am also hopeful about the future. I'm no longer the neglected kid or the family scapegoat. I am only me, paving my own way. I want to thank everyone for their support along this journey. You have no idea how much your words of support have meant. My last update will be this one. I should put this chapter behind me and concentrate on writing the next one. Good luck to me. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I cut ties with a friend who was causing trouble, and they smeared my name, turned my friends against me, and alienated others, completely destroying my social status. In the bustling heart of downtown, amid the glass towers and the relentless buzz of corporate life, I found myself forging what I believed would be a lifelong friendship with Johnny. We were associates in a prominent marketing firm, thrown together by chance but bonded by a mutual zeal for innovative ideas and a shared rhythm in our work ethics. It was a connection that seemed destined to thrive beyond the typical workplace alliances, characterized by our lunchtime brainstorming sessions and after-hours collaborations that blurred the line between professional and personal. Johnny was more than just a colleague. He was my confidant and mentor in those early days. His charismatic presence and sharp intellect made him a beacon for many within our office, yet he chose to invest his trust and friendship in me. We celebrated each project victory with a fervor that only true friends could understand and supported each other through every professional setback. The camaraderie we shared was not only rare but deeply cherished. Lunch breaks were our cherished catch-up sessions, an opportunity to swap stories, share jokes, and combine our spare change for extra ice cream. These shared moments of youthful joy and carefree laughter were the beats that nurtured our growing friendship. However, as the quarters rolled into years, subtle shifts began to emerge in our dynamic. Johnny received a well-deserved promotion, one that placed him in a more strategic role within the company. Initially, I was thrilled for him, proud even, but it wasn't long before his new position began to cast a shadow over our interactions. His availability dwindled, meetings were missed, and those invaluable shared moments at lunch became sparse and distracted. Johnny changed. The guy who used to be full of life became distant and quiet. Our friendship, which felt like it would last forever, started slipping away. The connection we had slowly faded, leaving me feeling lost and uncertain. The initial signs were subtle, almost imperceptible, but gradually they became more evident. The first indication was our diminished conversations. The humorous banter that used to echo during our shared walks seemed to dwindle down to barely audible whispers, replaced by a silence that spoke volumes of the emotional chasm that was building. I noticed a change not just in frequency but in tone. Our conversations, once filled with mutual enthusiasm and support, now seemed laden with subtle jibes and a competitiveness I hadn't felt before. Johnny, once my greatest ally, started to feel like a silent rival. His remarks, which I once took as constructive criticisms, began to feel undercutting and dismissive. The strain reached a tipping point during a high-stakes project where I felt undermined in front of our team. It became clear that what we had could no longer coexist with the competitive fervor of our office environment. It was a painful realization, one that confronted me not just during office hours, but in the quiet solitude of my apartment. For the sake of my mental well-being and career sanity, I knew I had to distance myself from Johnny. This decision, fraught with emotional and professional risk, marked a profound shift in my life at the firm, setting the stage for a series of events that would challenge my resilience and redefine my understanding of workplace relationships. The decision to distance myself from Johnny was neither impulsive nor easy. It required a meticulous calculation of the potential fallout alongside a hefty dose of emotional fortitude. The friendship that had once been my sanctuary within the office had morphed into a source of constant unease, clouding my judgment and dampening my spirit. I deliberated over our last interaction, replaying the moment where his veiled criticisms had not only undercut my ideas, but had also subtly questioned my competence in front of our team. That meeting was a turning point. I realized that preserving my professional integrity and emotional well-being necessitated a boundary between us. Initially, I attempted to limit our interactions to strictly professional exchanges. During meetings, I would keep my contributions succinct and direct, avoiding any personal commentary that might invite the banter we used to enjoy. In the office, I exchanged polite nods instead of the warm smiles of our previous camaraderie. These subtle shifts were my armor, a way to shield myself from the discomfort of our changing relationship. However, Johnny noticed these changes quicker than I anticipated. His initial reaction was one of confusion, which quickly soured to irritation when it became evident that the distance was intentional. The backlash began subtly. I first noticed it in the way he began to withhold information. Details about client feedback or team meetings, which he would have once shared without hesitation, were now passed to me through intermediaries. This tactic not only isolated me professionally but began to erode my standing within our team. Johnny's influence was undeniable, and his selective communication ensured that I was always a step behind, scrambling to catch up with decisions already set in motion without my input. As my professional isolation intensified, Johnny's tactics grew more aggressive. He started to question my contributions in team meetings, often dismissing my proposals with a condescending smirk or a sharp retort that left little room for debate. These public displays not only undermined my confidence but also began to color my colleagues' perceptions of my capability. Whispers and sideways glances started to fill the spaces where nods of approval and congratulatory pats on the back had once been. The environment I had thrived in became a labyrinth of skepticism and doubt, masterfully orchestrated by the friend I once trusted. Even though I tried to understand, it felt like Johnny was slipping through my fingers. The person I once shared everything with was now a stranger, and I struggled to navigate this new reality without him by my side. The smearing of my name was not limited to closed-door meetings or subtle exchanges. Johnny leveraged his charisma and network to cast further aspersions on my professional reputation. He shared anecdotes that painted me as unreliable and uncooperative, often embellished with enough humor to make them stick. These stories spread through our office like wildfire, fueled by the allure of office gossip and the credibility Johnny still commanded socially. The consequences were immediate and painful. Colleagues who had once sought my company at lunch or coffee breaks now gave polite excuses to avoid me. Invitations to after-work gatherings dwindled until they ceased altogether. The sense of alienation extended beyond the confines of our office walls. It seeped into my professional network, tainting my connections and opportunities within the industry. The emotional toll was immense. Each day at the office became a test of endurance. I found myself grappling with a spectrum of emotions, from anger and betrayal to a profound sense of loss. The isolation was suffocating, and the professional setbacks left me questioning my own abilities and worth. The office, once a place of ambition and fulfillment, had become a battleground where I was constantly on the defensive, wary of the next rumor or undermining comment. Feeling cornered and desperate, I sought to understand the extent of the damage. Conversations with a few trusted colleagues revealed the depth of Johnny's influence and the complexity of the web he had woven against me. Their hesitancy to speak openly, coupled with their sympathetic glances, confirmed my worst fears. Johnny's narrative was now the dominant one, and my professional image was in tatters. Amid this turmoil, there were moments of clarity and resolution. I realized that surrendering to despair would only validate Johnny's portrayal of me as weak and incapable. Determined not to let his actions define my career, I began to strategize a comeback that focused on professionalism and resilience. I started documenting our interactions, gathering concrete evidence of Johnny's manipulative tactics. I renewed my efforts to deliver impeccable work, ensuring that my contributions could stand up to the most rigorous scrutiny. Additionally, I sought the counsel of our HR department, presenting my case with a level of detail that left no room for doubt. This move, while risky, was necessary to expose the undercurrents of manipulation and sabotage that had poisoned my professional life. The HR intervention was a turning point, catalyzing a series of investigations that gradually began to shift the narrative within our office. Despite these efforts, the journey to reclaim my professional standing and personal peace was fraught with challenges. The betrayal I felt was not easily erased, and the path to rebuilding trust within my professional circle was a slow and precarious one. Yet, through this adversity, I discovered an inner resilience and a determination to rise above pettiness and sabotage. I realized that while I could not control Johnny's actions or the opinions of others, I could certainly control my response and my commitment to my values and my career. The annual company retreat, traditionally a time for celebration and camaraderie, became the arena where the full extent of Johnny's campaign against me crystallized into a glaringly painful reality. The event was set in a picturesque lodge outside the city, an ironic backdrop to the internal turmoil I was facing. As colleagues gathered, the air was thick with anticipation, not just for the planned activities, but for the undercurrents of office politics, now more pronounced than ever due to Johnny's maneuverings. The pinnacle of conflict arrived on the second evening during the gala dinner, a formal affair meant to foster unity and toast to our collective successes. However, as speeches commenced and accolades were handed out, the isolation I felt was palpable. Whispers ceased when I approached, smiles faltered, and conversations ended abruptly. A stark contrast to the previous years when I was at the heart of the festivities. It was during these moments that I overheard a group of newer colleagues discussing Johnny's latest tale, disparaging my contributions to a crucial project. The rumor was not just a slight against my professional competence, but painted me as actively sabotaging the team's efforts. The sting of betrayal was sharp, as these were not just Johnny's whispers anymore. They had become a narrative others were all too willing to believe. Fueled by a mix of hurt and indignation, I realized that passive endurance was no longer an option. The time had come to confront the situation head-on. Gathering my resolve, I approached Johnny, who was holding court among a group of laughing colleagues. The circle opened, the laughter died down, and the air bristled with tension as I asked to speak with him privately. We moved away from the curious eyes and found ourselves on the quiet balcony overlooking the dark woods. The contrast between the serenity of our surroundings and the storm brewing between us could not have been starker. "Johnny," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside, "I know what you've been saying about me. This ends tonight." Johnny's face, usually so composed, betrayed a flicker of surprise before his features settled into a cool mask of indifference. "I'm not sure what you've heard, but I think you're taking office chatter too seriously," he responded smoothly, a calculated dismissiveness in his tone. "This isn't just chatter," I countered, feeling a surge of clarity as I spoke. "It's targeted and it's destructive. You've changed, and not for the better. We were friends once, but now you're using what you know about me to break me down." "Why?" For a moment, it seemed as if he might deny it, but then his posture relaxed, a resigned sigh escaping him. "Look, it's not personal. This is how the game is played at our level. You should know that. I have to protect my position, and sometimes that means playing hardball." The honesty, stark and unembellished, hit me harder than any of his rumors had. This was no longer the Johnny I knew. This was a strategist speaking, one who saw relationships as assets or obstacles. "I don't believe in winning this way," I said firmly. "You're right, we're not just colleagues, we were friends, and that should have meant something. If this is how you choose to climb the ladder, count me out. But I won't let you drag my name through the mud to do it." The conversation ended without resolution, as I knew it would, but it marked a significant shift within me. From that point on, I knew that my path would not align with Johnny's, that I would have to forge my own way forward, rooted in the values I held dear: integrity, respect, and trust. I walked away from that confrontation with a heavy heart but a clear vision. The next steps were daunting but necessary. I would need to rebuild not just my reputation but also my sense of self, independent of the toxic dynamics that had come to define my professional life. The fight to clear my name was just beginning, but it would be fought on my terms, with transparency and dignity. As the retreat drew to a close, I prepared myself for the challenges ahead, strengthened by the conviction that truth eventually would restore what malice had sought to destroy. The resolution I found during that encounter with Johnny started to lay the road for my recovery and vengeance against the harm he had caused. Even as the retreat came to an end and we all went back to our regular lives at work, in the days that followed, I felt a mixture of fear and resolve as I began to negotiate the turbulent waters of office politics with a renewed sense of purpose. I started by contacting human resources. I called a departmental meeting and brought a comprehensive notebook documenting all the times Johnny had made me look bad, backed up by emails and eyewitness accounts from coworkers who had seen him in action. Not only was my name being cleared, but a pattern of behavior that was detrimental to the company culture as a whole was being brought to light. The HR department opened a formal investigation into the situation, since they were responsive and concerned. Even though it took longer than I would have liked for corporate justice to go forward, the simple act of having my complaint acknowledged made me feel like I had regained some measure of my dignity. At the same time, I started to restore my damaged reputation. I made personal contact with coworkers to engage with them on ongoing initiatives and offer my assistance and insights when needed, rather than to argue my position. Reestablishing a connection with the professional world I had been cut off from was more important than simply demonstrating my value. These efforts started to pay off gradually. As initiatives gained traction and my efforts were recognized, the story started to change. The ability and dedication that had been questioned were now apparent and unquestionable. A few loyal coworkers provided essential support during this experience. My strongest ally turned out to be Sarah, a peer who had worked with Johnny and me since our early days at the company. She shared her excellent experiences working with me, actively dispelling rumors in addition to offering emotional support. Mark, a more recent team member who had personally heard Johnny's derogatory comments and was prepared to voice his concerns, was another important ally. Their assistance not only lifted my spirits but also contributed to my credibility being restored among colleagues. In these mediation sessions, it became evident that although ambition propelled Johnny's activities, they were also an ill-advised attempt to maneuver around his insecurities. Though it did give a level of intricacy to the matter that I had not previously fully grasped, recognizing this did not excuse his behavior. Months later, my position inside the company started to return thanks to my hard work, HR's assistance, and the mediation process. Coworkers began to get past the gossip and note the differences between my real behavior and what Johnny was portraying. Invitations to work together on projects multiplied, and the strained professional connections started to heal. The trip was enlightening, yet emotionally exhausting. With every stride ahead, I was able to strengthen my fortitude and reaffirm my dedication to upholding my integrity in the face of difficulty. I also came to understand the value of having a network of people who will support you through difficult times and when you try to start over. I had learned the value of genuine professional companionship from Sarah, Mark, and a few other people. I started to change attitudes in the office by concentrating on mending relationships and repairing my reputation with diligent, honest work and transparent communication. After ending my relationship with Johnny, I learned that although the road to recovery could be difficult and drawn out, it also presented a chance for tremendous advancement on both a personal and professional level. As time passed, A year after the challenging events at work, things started to calm down. Johnny's public apology helped reduce the office tension. Although my reputation wasn't completely untouched, it was mostly mended, bringing me a fresh sense of clarity and purpose. A valuable lesson about awareness and the real nature of relationships had been provided by the experience. I realized who my true allies were, coworkers like Sarah and Mark, whose bravery and devotion had been vital. This insight changed the way I approached business partnerships. I grew warier, but also more appreciative of sincere relationships, cherishing those who showed honesty and provided support during difficult times. Our relationships, which had been established in the face of hardship, became stronger, and our workplace once again seemed like a welcoming community. I made a conscious effort to expand my professional network going forward, to promote an environment of transparency and cooperation. I started a peer support group at work. The group provided a secure environment for discussing difficulties and victories, promoting candid communication and mutual support. Through this program, I was able to heal some of the rifts within our team and establish myself as a leader in creating a more welcoming and upbeat work environment. In addition, my experiences have given me a stronger sense of resilience and a better comprehension of both professional and personal boundaries. I discovered how crucial it is to establish and uphold boundaries with coworkers, as well as with myself when it comes to controlling how I react to stress and conflict. This self-awareness helped me maintain a better work-life balance and gave me a better understanding of how to face difficulties without sacrificing my morals or well-being. Update 1. A year later, I'm thriving in my role, respected and valued. The office feels like a community again, and I'm leading initiatives that foster teamwork and integrity. My journey has strengthened me, and I look forward to the future with optimism and renewed confidence. Update 2. Some people say my story is a vivid illustration of the challenges that can occur in a professional working environment and the importance of protecting one's mental health and professional image. It shows how relationships can change over time and the impact they have on individual careers. I helped one person find empathy by detailing the struggle to regain honor and status in the company, as well as the lessons of resilience. I'm glad that the story provides a realistic look at the dark side of competition in business and the value of upholding principles and professional ethics, which at least helps people like me be more positive in terms of work, somewhat psychological. Thanks for following my story. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Husband and I agreed we don't want more kids, but when I suggested he get a vasectomy or I get my tubes tied, he screamed that it would take away our manhood and womanhood. Okay, Reddit, I need some unbiased outside opinions because I truly feel like I'm going crazy dealing with this situation. I, 28F, and my partner, 28M, have 2 children together and have been married for 8 years. For those 8 years, I've either been on birth control when we were preventing pregnancy or tracking my cycle when we were trying to conceive. Adding this just to give the community the context that reproductive responsibility has always fallen on my shoulders. Recently, we discussed the possibility of being done with children since we have our 2, and the family really feels complete. My partner is in agreement that a 3rd child is off the table for him as well. So with that, I thought, great, I can bring up sterilization for either him or I. The reason I wanted this is because I've had every form of birth control before, and none of them ever left me feeling 100% okay. So I wanted to be done with birth control completely since we both agreed we're done. It's been about 3 months since our talk about more children, so I brought up either getting a vasectomy for him or me getting a salpingectomy, removing my fallopian tubes. What I thought would be a productive conversation completely blew up. He outright refused a vasectomy, and when I was okay with that and said I'd happily get a salpingectomy, he completely flipped his lid on me, screaming at me about how he forbids it from happening and he won't allow me to damage myself like that. I ended up just leaving the conversation and headed to get our kids from school. But on the way, I ended up calling my gynecologist to schedule a consultation for the salpingectomy after making sure I won't need my spouse's approval. So Reddit, AITA if I go through with the sterilization against my partner's wishes? Update 1, March 7, 2025. Due to the support and advice I found on here, I managed to get the confidence and level headspace needed to try to have another conversation with my partner. After getting our children to their school/daycare for the day, I went to our local coffee shop to pick us up each a cup. I figured it can either be seen as a show of care or a peace offering. Once I got home, he was sitting at our island doom-scrolling through TikTok. I think we've all been there. I decided standing across from him would be a bit of a better choice, so I gave us our respective cups and asked if I could get his attention for a conversation. Well, what I hoped would be productive turned unproductive quickly as he sighed with an eye roll and turned off his phone. I started by asking the big question of if he wanted any more children. I even suggested he doesn't think about what I said on the subject and just tell me his feelings about more children. He answered a firm no and told me, as he said before, a third child is and will always be off the table. I then asked him if he had any fears or concerns about surgery/med procedures. He said no to this question as well. So I asked if he understood the procedure and what it entailed, and he said yes, he does, which is why he doesn't want me to get it done. In his words, I wouldn't be a woman if I got any part of my reproductive organs, what makes me a woman, removed, and he refuses to allow me down that path. I then followed up by asking about his getting a vasectomy, and he said it's pretty much the same thing for men and he won't let anyone take away of manhood. The final question I managed to ask was, did he just expect me to be on birth control forever? And this man looked me in my face and said, it's worked so well for me already. Why change things up? Guys, as I stated in my previous post, I am miserable and in debilitating pain with birth control. At the end of this, I just grabbed my coffee and went sit on our porch, just trying to wrap my head around the conversation while he sits in the house acting like nothing is wrong and we're just having a normal day off together. Update 2 March 9th, 2025. Hey Reddit, I just wanted to give a small update. I've been reading all of your comments on my last 2 posts. I swear I appreciate all the advice and kind words, sometimes even the unkind words, because it gives me more to think about. So, to start, I've been at my sister's with the children all weekend. I told my husband that she was feeling lonely and wanted us to stay over. He believed it, as we usually try to do this once a month. I called off of work Monday so my sister and I can meet with the divorce lawyer that handled her divorce. I'm unsure if divorce will be the path I go down, but I want to get my ducks in a row before laying it all down for my husband. Also, I would like to answer some questions that I saw a lot of in my last post. Yes, I still plan to go through with the sterilization. I absolutely don't want any more children, even if this ends in divorce. I plan to tell him it's getting done no matter what he says or believes. There will definitely be no sex with him anymore. I feel like I lost all attraction and respect for him. The children don't know what's going on. They just think it's a fun time at Auntie's house. Condoms are a no. I exist because of a broken condom. I currently have an IUD, and while yes, it has been the best birth control I've been on, I still cannot function properly for a week out of the month due to pain, bleeding, and depressive episodes. No, he hasn't done anything like this before, which is what caught me so off guard with everything. Disagreements in our relationship have up until now been able to be discussed and compromised on. We grew up in a deep Catholic community but fell away from the church years ago. Update 3 March 17th, 2025. So I would like to start off by saying thank you, everyone, for the amazing support I've received throughout the comments and messages. I know I haven't replied in a while, but I have been reading it all. Now to start off, I'll update everyone on the meeting with the lawyer. I was able to talk through my options as well as what legally would be my husband's and what legally would be mine. I know my next steps if things would lead to divorce, and I feel confident in taking those steps if needed. After the meeting, I went back home and got settled back in. I ended up just doing normal tasks until the kids got home, and when my husband got home, I suggested getting the children to bed early so we can talk. So we did just that. He ended up starting the conversation by saying if I plan to get the sterilization, then he wants a divorce because he can't be with someone who doesn't share his same values. At that moment, I knew this was it for us. So I informed him of my consultation this week for the surgery and my intention to go through with it no matter what. There was honestly a lot of back and forth. I want to say it lasted for 3 hours before he said he's done and left the house. He's been staying at his mom's and hasn't really asked about the children staying with him. I have offered per the suggestion of my lawyer, but to no avail. Currently, I'm getting a legal separation agreement written up so hopefully start the divorce process peacefully, or as peacefully as possible. The kids ask about him, but I just keep telling them he's helping grandma for a bit. I'm not sure how to tell them he won't be back. Thankfully, my therapist suggested a children's therapist to me, so I plan to set them an appointment soon. I'm honestly not too sure where everything went wrong with us. I always felt like we had true love, but maybe I was just naive to any of the other signs. Now on to the next story. Story 10. X uses power of attorney. I forgot about to sell my house, empty my bank account, and sell all my belongings while I was getting medical treatment abroad. I have gone from terrified to white-hot anger to just cold in my stomach and all sorts of other feelings, and it is taking me some time to write this, so I apologize for anything which is unclear. Background. I was just out of the country for over 2 months while I was being treated by specialists for medical problems. During that time, I had my personal valuables kept at a storage company, which was supposed to be good for security since I don't have close family and didn't want to leave things like my computer sitting around in my apartment for that long. I also have some payments I get which I made sure would automatically go to an account because I have renters in my old house and want to make sure certain bills get paid without me having to think about it. I thought it was all set up good enough that I could be out of the country and focus on what I needed to focus on, then come back to everything as I left it. A while ago, when I was in a lot of pain and on a lot of medication, I had a lawyer help me make sure my now ex could make decisions for me if I was incapacitated. Honestly, I had totally forgotten about this because at the time I was very foggy. I barely remember anything about it. The night before my flight, my ex told me they could not be with me anymore because of my health problems, saying I was going to die and they did not want to be with me for that. My issues are pretty bad, and yes, my life will maybe not be as long as it might have been, but I really could not deal with that at the time mentally, so I just said, okay, and went on my trip. We had been together for 16 months, but not strictly living together. Now I came back to learn somehow my ex has started taking and maybe selling everything. They have paperwork saying I was incapacitated plus the power of attorney I granted them. I was not incapacitated at any time during my treatment. I don't know what doctor could have signed such a thing. During the time I was gone, my ex has used this to check my belongings out of storage, and I have no idea where my things are. I am worried it has all been sold. Stuff has also been taken out of my apartment. The tenants in my house were told by my ex that I was bedridden and they would have to move so my house could be sold. They are month to month and took this at face value and already moved out before I got back. They informed me that a realtor had been showing the house to people. I managed to get in touch with the realtor, and when I got him to understand the situation, he freaked out. There is already a buyer because my house was listed very far under market value. Stuff was already signed. Some money has already been paid. The buyers are already getting ready to move in. I told him to cancel everything and that this was not authorized in any way. He said the paperwork my ex had was legit and he needs to figure out how to handle this. I am waiting for more details. The account I set up before I left is cleaned out down to pennies, and I missed an important payment because of this. The bank says, yes, my ex accessed my account and everything was in order because I was incapacitated. My ex knew I was setting this account up and what it was for. They probably got details about it from my apartment. I have talked to my ex and the police. My ex barely responds, but when I stood at their door and screamed, they finally told me that I was in a coma. Not true. So they had to sell my things for me. I think I heard them saying, "You won't need it anyway," through the door. The police are telling me a few things. I tried to report my ex for theft for stealing my things from storage and was told it is a civil issue. I told them the rest of the story and it's like they don't even know how to respond to me. Sitting at the police station seems to just be wasting my time because no one there seems to be able to do anything. They say, "Come back tomorrow when someone else will be there." Supposedly officers went to my ex's place and were shown the paperwork. Tomorrow I am going to see a lawyer who advertises help with elder abuse, power of attorney fraud, which is the closest thing I could find. If they can't help me, then where do I go next? Is there some key thing I can say to the police to get them to arrest my ex right this second and stop this? I have to believe this will all be fixed eventually, but how screwed am I? Comments where OP has replied deleted. Did you ever actually give a POA? You need to revoke that SAP. OP. It is possible I signed documents giving them the ability to use my money for me to pay bills and do other things a while ago because I was unable to leave the hospital. I will be able to take care of that with the lawyer tomorrow, I hope. And I know I seem like an idiot. I did not really understand what I was doing at the time. I was in a lot of pain and did not have an exact diagnosis yet, and I must have thought it was the right thing to do. But I don't even remember exactly when it happened because parts of that time are all a blur. Update. I was being a bit paranoid when making my original post because I did not want to get condescending responses. I'm a woman in my early 30s and my ex is a man around the same age. It has been a strange few days. I met with my lawyer Monday morning, and she was very supportive. Even though she usually deals with elder abuse, she said my situation was very much within her expertise and seemed excited to have me as a client. She was also very angry. After last Saturday, I have not had a lot of emotional energy, so it was nice to see someone be like that on my behalf. I spent a while in my lawyer's office, and later in the day my ex called me, but my lawyer had told me not to talk to him for now, so I did not answer. We listened to a message together though, and my ex said he was selling things for my benefit and was investing it for me to help with any bills I have to pay. My ex also said they were interested in getting back together since I came back safely from my trip. My lawyer laughed, and it was a very surreal moment. After just a day, my lawyer found out that my ex had done something like this before. He had been with a person who was very sick for a while, then took off with the contents of a joint account and their car right before they died. The person's estate got into a legal battle with my ex and got the car back, but not the money in the end. She thinks this is basically what my ex was doing to me, and that they probably did it other times too, but were not always sued over it, or it was in other states. The whole relationship we had was just fake, I guess, and he misread the situation when I was leaving to go see specialists, thinking I was probably not coming back. That also explains why he never had a job if he just makes money off people like me. My lawyer sent a lot of letters out to lots of places on Monday, including one to my ex. They were all about revoking the power of attorney I had granted, and the one to my ex had a bunch of demands in it, telling him to produce my money and belongings as well as copies of the power of attorney and the other documents my ex had about me. She spoke with the realtor and some other people about my house, and the unfortunate reality is I should probably let the sale happen and take the money. That is not really what I wanted to hear, but it's not the end of the world. She also had me get someone to change the locks on my apartment. Wednesday was a weird day because my ex showed up at my lawyer's office with some of my stuff. I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what that was like, but I do have my computer back. My ex also produced the access codes for online investments made with my money, which seems to have pissed off my lawyer because it's going to be a headache making sure I get all my money back. She has dealt with this before and is going to help me recover as much of it as possible. She also says we will almost definitely be going after my ex for money because there are a lot of problems with what he did and the power of attorney itself is very suspect, but she needs to talk to the hospital and some other people first. My lawyer says it's a big deal that the paperwork my ex was using to say I was incapacitated is from when I was hospitalized around the time the power of attorney actually happened. To sum it all up, now I have my computers back, but my money is in online investments, and it may be difficult to get the full value back. It is also likely that the rest of the money from the sale of my house is coming directly to me. My lawyer is super awesome, and she is spending a lot of time devoted to this for me, which feels really good. I just saw my local doctor, and he doesn't like that I am under so much stress right after I came home, so I'm going to try and relax. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.